The one-eyed, silver-haired warrior prepares himself, determined to reveal his true identity. Fully immersed in his roleplay, the silver-haired warrior stands undaunted before a towering horned skull monster. A sudden, powerful purple blast erupts, forcing the silver-haired warrior to swiftly dodge the incoming strike. Dodging through a barrage of purple energy blasts, the silver-haired warrior remains completely free of regret or shame. The giant skull beast roars in fury, mockingly labeling the retreating warrior a pathetic human coward. Sudden sharp spikes of dark energy pierce the warrior, while the beast commands him to die. Screaming in agony, the silver-haired warrior falls backward into a white void while holding his dark sword. Lying helpless on the cold ground, the battered warrior spits up blood in his final moments. Gripping his sword, the warrior runs back into battle, questioning why his quest for fun turned into misery. Blood drips from the warrior's mouth as he grits his teeth and desperately tries to speak. With blood dripping down his leg, the wounded warrior struggles to stand while clutching his sword. The skull beast mocks the warrior's pathetic, struggling body, urging him to die since he is helpless. As the beast asks if he desires death, the warrior fiercely grips his sword, refusing to yield. Deep down, his only wish is to put an end to this stupid roleplay. Gathering all his remaining strength, the silver-haired warrior screams his desperate desire to go home. A massive, blinding red lightning strike crashes down, completely consuming the battlefield in a devastating explosion. A glowing system notification appears, confirming that the connection has been successfully verified. His tragic past began with his younger sister, who ran outside expecting their father's return. A sudden, brutal slash strikes the white-haired girl from behind, spraying blood across the bright field. Her birthday dress is stained crimson, as she lies lifeless before a silhouette holding a dark sword. Inside the house, the young blonde boy gasps in horror as his older brother stands guard. The boy watches in utter terror as his older brother, the chief knight, is suddenly decapitated. A white-haired woman swings her spiked mace in fury, cursing the attacker. As she fights, tears well up in her eyes amidst the overwhelming chaos. A horrific splash of blood silences her, instantly swallowing her tears in violence. His mother frantically pushes the boy away, screaming for him to run and save himself. The young boy weeps bitterly, begging to stay and fight because he is a knight too. Standing over a fallen victim, the mother desperately orders the boy to survive and run away. Running for his life, the boy looks back to see his arriving father immediately struck down. His memories become a blur, as the bloodied boy desperately grips a sword to defend himself. The entire world turns a terrifying bloody shade of red as the massacre continues. A single beam of moonlight illuminates the forest as the bloodied boy gasps for air. A dark blade suddenly pierces his right arm, sinking deep beneath his flesh. Red vines of dark energy surge through the boy's arm as the blade infects him. Boy trips over the uneven forest ground, crying out in sudden, sharp pain. Falling heavily to the forest floor, the injured boy groans in agony as footsteps approach. A chilling voice echoes through the darkness, praising the boy as a perfect vessel. A terrifying, shadowy silhouette, with a malicious grin, looms directly behind the frightened, weeping boy. The shadow entity grabs the boy's face as the boy desperately begs it to stop. Smiling wickedly, the dark entity reassures the boy that he will make a wonderful host. The boy desperately prays for a strong soul, capable of resisting this overwhelming demonic evil. He begs for a powerful savior who can triumph over the darkness and defeat the demons. Suddenly, his eye flies open as he wakes up gasping for breath, head wrapped in bandages. The silver-haired man sits up in confusion, realizing he is inside a moving wooden carriage. Arriving at Tatara trading post, the carriage driver stands over him and demands that he exit. The protagonist stares down in absolute silence, completely overwhelmed by his strange new reality. The protagonist suddenly stands up, startling the driver, who reacts in shock. Without uttering a single word, the silver-haired protagonist steps out and walks away. Watching him leave, the annoyed driver mutters to himself about how creepy the stranger is. Walking through the bustling trading post, The quiet protagonist keeps his gaze fixed forward. The silver-haired protagonist is absolutely thrilled by the incredible realism and immersion of the virtual environment. He reflects on the game's opening cinematic, amazed at how deeply the narrative resonates with him. Walking through the busy town streets, he marvels at how lifelike and responsive the townspeople are. His excitement grows as he contemplates whether he can successfully maintain his intense, dramatic roleplay persona. He takes in his surroundings, identifying the bustling Tatara trading post as the game's initial tutorial area. He recalls the legendary game's history, noting how the tragic classic has been beautifully remade in virtual reality. Taking a slow, deep breath, he gazes up at the sky to prepare himself for the adventure ahead. His grand ambition is revealed as he proudly embraces his identity as an extreme role-playing enthusiast. He fully commits to his dark persona, dramatically covering his eye patch while delivering a theatrical line. He quickly breaks character in his thoughts, defensively justifying his dramatic flair to reassure himself. Proud of his creative vision, he displays the elaborate character design sketches he drafted. A holographic interface reveals the intricate lore and stats of his chosen Demon Knight class story. He visualizes the terrifying backstory of a knight cursed by the very demon that destroyed his family. He imagines the tragic burden of keeping others at a distance to protect them from his dark powers. He dreads the dark possibility of losing control and bringing ruin upon others with his own hands. He completes his character concept, depicting a lonely, unstable heart hidden behind a fierce, unyielding exterior. Bursting into joyful laughter, he celebrates the sheer brilliance of his beautifully crafted roleplay concept. He strikes an eccentric, dramatic battle pose in public, utterly ignoring the bewildered stares of the townspeople. Regaining his composure, he decides it is finally time to focus and begin the actual roleplay. His confidence briefly wavers as he realizes he has no idea how to proceed next. He looks around expectantly, waiting for a quest window to appear in the open sky. Confused by the absence of user interface elements, he questions how to initiate the tutorial quest. A young nervous boy NPC approaches, recognizing his striking appearance and inquiring about his adventurer identity. An awkward silence settles over the street as they stand facing each other in silence. Surprised by the lack of dialogue prompts, he maintains his stoic character and confirms his identity. He issues a short commanding order, telling the young guide to lead the way forward. Intimidated by the warrior's intense presence, the startled boy quickly and nervously agrees to guide him. Following the anxious guide, the protagonist is highly impressed by how realistic and expressive the child NPC is. He overhears the rich, organic chatter of the townspeople, marveling at the highly sophisticated conversational AI decoy. He reflects on the rapid, astonishing advancement of virtual reality and artificial intelligence technologies. A brief look at the real world reveals a player lying peacefully inside a state-of-the-art capsule pod. Arriving at their destination, the young guide eagerly opens the wooden door to announce their arrival. His eyes widen slightly as he prepares to step inside and face the next challenge. They enter the Tatara Adventurers Guild, where the guide loudly announces the arrival of the new adventurer. He's completely awestruck by the realistic haptic sensations of the wooden floor and the overall sound quality. A friendly guild clerk holding a folder turns around to warmly welcome the arriving adventurer. She introduces herself as Isrin, the helpful clerk of the Tatara Adventurers Guild. Recognizing his striking features, Isrin politely asks him to present his adventurer's token for verification. A glowing tutorial window suddenly materializes in front of him, explaining how to access his inventory. He gets mildly annoyed as the holographic window clumsily blocks his limited, single-eyed field of vision. Amused by this minor user interface quirk, he reaches into the glowing screen to retrieve his token. He presents the metallic card, which the guild clerk quickly accepts and verifies with a smile. Hearing that the request is incredibly urgent, the protagonist nods firmly and demands to be led to the client. As they walk down the corridor, he feels a thrill of nervous anticipation for the grand tutorial quest. They meet the client, a stern-faced elderly man who immediately expresses intense disappointment upon seeing the warrior. The elderly guild master mockingly questions his sanity, prompting the panicked clerk to frantically intervene. Unbothered by the harsh insults, the protagonist gleefully anticipates a guilt-free verbal battle with the NPC cheat. He strategically weighs his options, confident that the tutorial quest will progress regardless of his responses. The impatient guildmaster demands an immediate response, while the clerk desperately begs him to watch his words. A confident smirk appears on his face as he finalizes the perfect dramatic response to deliver. The silver-haired protagonist coldly warns the guildmaster that his tongue lacks proper manners. The guild clerk, the guide, and the master are utterly dumbfounded by his bold statement. The protagonist breaks character in his thoughts, wondering why the NPC is reacting so intensely. He starts realizing that these virtual reality NPC might be far more complex than expected. The scene shifts as the protagonist reflects in hindsight on what he should have realized then. Narrative pauses briefly, signaling a transition before the fantasy adventure continues in earnest. He continues to question why a mere game NPC would exhibit such genuine surprise. The guild members gather closely around the elderly master, watching the stoic knight with apprehension. The guild master challenges him to follow, while the protagonist eagerly awaits the quest trigger. The clerk nervously asks if he volunteered blindly, as he rationalizes his mandatory game choice. The roleplay enthusiast rejoices, thoroughly enjoying the lifelike reactions and immersive depth of the game. The protagonist dramatically questions the clerk, asserting his absolute confidence against any potential sewer threats. Dark Knight dismisses his targets as mere insects, sending a shudder through the clerk. The guide quickly intervenes to start the quest, and the master accepts his help. The guide explains that workers sent to the sewers went missing, followed by a search party. The search party discovered that a dangerous demon nest has taken root deep inside. Believing the workers are dead, they request the knight to clear the nest and retrieve relics. The master reveals previous demon hunters were slaughtered, and the temple has delayed its response. The master doubts his scrawny frame can swing a sword, prompting the clerk's shock. He boasts that the task is a simple cleanup, while secretly wondering about the missing quest window. The guide tries to calm the master, who is highly offended by the warrior's arrogance. He privately worries that his dramatic roleplay is too convincing, making him want to explain himself. He reassures himself that lifelike NPCs are much better than players who ruin the mood. He recalls past online chat logs of other players mocking his intense, dedicated role-playing style. The clerk asks for confirmation, and the silver-haired knight formally accepts the sewer quest. The clerk begins drawing up the contract, outlining the primary and optional quest objectives. The protagonist inquires about the number of missing workers, and the guide confirms 13. Noting the absence of a quest window, he marvels at the game's extreme conversational realism. The clerk announces a massive gold reward, though the protagonist is surprised by the brokerage fee. He signs the contract, while feeling humorously ripped off by the realistic game brokerage fee. The clerk happily confirms that the contract is finalized and bids him good luck. As the contract is signed, the protagonist notices the long-awaited quest notification finally trigger. A holographic system window displays the quest details, prompting him to call the developers psychopaths. Despite his complaints, a cheerful expression reveals that he thoroughly enjoys the immersive design. The guide informs him that an inn has been booked under the guild's name. He is handed a hand-drawn paper map of the sewers, serving as an analog minimap. The serious expression, the guide entrusts the dangerous sewer mission to the knight. The protagonist is deeply touched by the guide's genuine concern and resolute, realistic behavior. Fully immersed in the realistic world, he vows that failure is absolutely not an option. The silver-haired knight stands resolutely before the massive stone gateway leading to the sewers. The gatekeeper expresses his relief, and the protagonist confidently assures him he has it covered. He prepares his massive greatsword, eager to unleash its destructive power inside the sewers. With a powerful, bloody strike, he easily cuts a giant sewer rat in half. The knight stands in silent contemplation over his slain foe, assessing his first victory. He panics slightly as a system notification reveals his weapon's durability has already dropped. Realizing the narrow sewers will quickly ruin his greatsword, he decides to switch weapons. A system notification details the balanced properties of his newly selected versatile longsword. Re-equipped and fully prepared, the cheerful protagonist eagerly sets off to begin his hunt. He confidently unsheathes his sleek longsword, ready to face the dark horrors of the sewers. Leaving the bright entrance behind, the knight strides into the dark, echoing depths. The light brown-haired guide reflects on how terrifying the demon hunter is, calling him on a whole different level. Heavy metal gates loom over a dark stone corridor as the split-haired knight walks deeper into the sewer. Gritting his teeth in anger, the split-haired knight mutters about the filthy demons ahead of him. With a glowing green slash of his sword, the knight cleaves a green-skinned demon goblin in half. A series of green energy slashes pierce through a horde of screaming goblin demons. Blood sprays through the air as the knight swings his blade, wiping out multiple demons in a single sweep. His red eye glows menacingly as the knight vows to send every last demon back to hell. The severed head of a green goblin demon rolls onto the blood-soaked stone floor with a dull thud. Walking past the defeated foes, the knight complains to himself about how utterly boring the battle was. A glowing system quest window displays the completed demon elimination count, while the knight wonders how anyone could neglect the sewers. Looking back over his shoulder, the split-haired knight lets out a long, heavy sigh. He clutches his split-colored hair in absolute despair, realizing he killed dozens of enemies without a single item drop. He grumbles about the game balancing the massive gold reward by giving absolutely zero loot drops. He walks forward, feeling so frustrated that he wishes he could personally loot the goblin corpses. He stops as he spots a young boy hanging upside down, tangled in thick green vines on the stone wall. With a swift, clean swing of his sword, the knight cuts the vines and sends the boy falling. He reaches out and catches the falling boy by his ankle with a heavy metallic gauntlet. Holding the boy upside down, the knight stares in silence as the dazed child weakly thanks him. A system window announces the completion of the optional rescue quest, while the knight observes the boy. Text window appears, outlining his character's dark backstory, where the demon that killed his sibling is sealed inside him. He visualizes the tragic memory of his sibling and considers it a miracle that his character hasn't gone completely insane. He reaches out his hand to comfort the rescued boy, glad to have saved at least one child. He pauses as he looks at his demon-possessed armored claw, wondering if a knight should show a softer side. Deciding against patting the child with his dark, corrupted hand, he clenches his fist and remembers his duty. The young boy looks up with wide, hopeful eyes and asks if he is a knight. The split-haired warrior confirms his identity, silently promising to treat the realistic NPC boy with proper kindness. As they walk, the knight asks why the boy was trapped, and the boy sadly explains that his mother went missing inside. Reflected in the murky water, the boy apologizes and explains he came down to search for her. Although his heart aches for the boy, the knight sternly tells him that searching the sewers was not his responsibility. The boy lowers his head, repeating his apology in a soft, dejected tone. The knight desperately wants to hug and comfort the boy, but he maintains his stoic character exterior, telling the child not to apologize. They discover a skeleton on the sewer floor, surrounded by mining tools, a leather bag, and a mother's keepsake. Upon recognizing his mother's belongings, the devastated boy breaks down into bitter, uncontrollable tears. The child eventually cries himself to exhaustion, forcing the stoic knight to carry him out under his arm. The knight marvels at the lifelike motion capture, wondering if a real child actor performed the boy's emotional scene. Walking out of the dim sewers carrying the sleeping boy, he feels immensely relieved that this tragedy is only a game. A new system window suddenly flashes, warning that areas must be purified with holy light, or demons will respawn. The prompt urges him to ensure that demons never rise from this land again. Looking back in hindsight, the knight deeply regrets not paying closer attention to that system warning. Suddenly, the light brown-haired guide bursts through the wooden guild doors, screaming about an urgent distress call. He frantically informs the guildmaster, clerk, and knight that a merchant guild signal flare was spotted nearby. The split-haired knight narrows his pale yellow eye, sensing the immediate danger of the situation. A horrific crimson scene reveals two blood-soaked merchant guild members lying dead on the stained grass. A close-up reveals the lifeless, blood-splattered face of a victim with his eyes frozen open in terror. A dark-haired young man crouches behind a stone wall, shivering in sheer terror as monstrous screeches echo through the woods. The terrified survivor covers his mouth to muffle his breathing as the blood-chilling sounds draw closer. Back in the safety of the town, the rescued boy asks if his mother is happy by God's side. Walking beside the child, the knight silently reflects that the game developers are the only gods in this world. Wiping away a tear, he desperately hopes the developers aren't cruel psychopaths, and that the boy's mother is truly at peace. Guild clerk Isrin opens the door, welcoming the returning adventurer back to the Tatara Adventurers Guild. Isrin reacts with shock and nervously inquires about the child brought back by the knight. The split-haired knight explains the child's identity and suggests asking him directly for details. The knight hands a heavy burlap sack to Isrin, catching her completely off guard. Isrin asks about the sack's contents as the knight explains they belong to the deceased workers. Isrin stares at the heavy sack, sadly wondering if it contains the belongings of all 13 missing workers. The knight bluntly confirms the contents, and Isrin quickly promises to verify their identities with the clients. Isrin peers into the sack and is deeply shaken upon seeing the gold-colored adventurer tags. A wave of sadness washes over Isrin as she gazes down at the recovered mementos. Isrin bows deeply to the knight, expressing the guild's profound gratitude for his success. The protagonist internally grumbles about the intense struggle of searching the sewers without any quest markers. Hearing Isrin's emotional gratitude instantly melts the knight's lingering frustration, making him reflect on his hyper-immersion. Isrin asks if his hunt is finished for the day, catching the protagonist off guard. Isrin asks the knight if he is returning to the sewers or taking a rest first. The protagonist explains the concept of a full dive, a costly gaming capsule allowing non-stop play. The confused knight questions why he would need to return to the cleared sewers. The knight wonders if he is expected to perform a purification quest in the sewers. Isrin looks completely bewildered and repeats the word purification with a nervous sweat. A sweat-inducing realization hits Isrin as she asks if all demons were truly eliminated. The knight confidently claims success, while Isrin nervously suggests he returned only to rescue the child. The knight takes offense, dramatically asking Isrin if she is questioning his martial capabilities. Isrin frantically shakes her head and desperately apologizes, terrified of offending the formidable knight. Isrin assures the knight that the guild will care for the rescued child while she fetches the client. The knight decides to use the waiting time to inspect his level up and skill tree. A glowing system window appears, prompting him to discuss the sewer quest with the client. A sparkling heavy sack of gold coins is presented as his massive quest reward. The protagonist marvels at the harsh game economy, comparing it to old-school gaming loot systems. The client offers to cover the brokerage fee and buy any gathered demon loot. The knight recalls the butchery life skill, but remains satisfied with his choice of combat skills. Maintaining his dark persona, the knight arrogantly dismisses collecting low-level loot from monsters. The protagonist proudly examines his uniquely tailored skill tree designed entirely around his roleplay concept. The protagonist rejoices that the single-player format allows him to build his character without restrictions. The silver-haired knight turns to the guildmaster, asking if his task is officially finished. The knight dramatically bids farewell as a system notification confirms his quest is complete. A sudden loud disturbance breaks the peaceful atmosphere and completely startles the protagonist. The guildmaster bellows in anger as an urgent shout interrupts them with an emergency. The protagonist silently praises the realistic and charmingly grumpy design of the guildmaster. Panicked messenger bursts through the guild doors, frantically shouting about a distress call. The messenger reports that a merchant guild signal flare was spotted rising nearby. The knight realizes this urgent distress call is a classic transition to his next quest. The furious guild master curses the lazy city guards and orders his men to assemble. The guildmaster commands the knight to join the mission, prompting an internal sigh. Knight delivers a cold, dramatic response, warning the guildmaster never to command him. The guildmaster appeals to his loyalty, while promising a handsome reward for his assistance. The knight formally accepts the task as Isrin promises to prepare his contract by his return. A new system window appears detailing his quest objectives, satisfying the eager player. The knight rejects the messenger's suggestion to meet mercenaries, demanding to go straight to the action. The knight deduces that the quest is a timed rescue mission requiring absolute speed. Messenger defends the knight's incredible strength, earning a silent cheer from the protagonist. The messenger prepares horses as the protagonist confidently recalls his virtual horse riding experience. The protagonist strikes a victorious pose, eager to claim his precious experience points. Crows fly across a crimson sunset sky as their loud caws echo through the air. Demonic creatures run in a frantic stampede, their heavy footsteps shaking the burning ground. Split-haired knight confidently declares that his sword will bring him victory. A powerful red sword slices cleanly through the dark, misty air. Riding a galloping brown horse, the knight charges forward, easily cutting down multiple goblins in his path. The knight cries out to the heavens in battle fury as blood splatters around him. Surrounded by goblins, a terrified survivor spots the knight and desperately begs him for rescue. Another survivor struggles against a goblin's grasp, panicking as he fears his imminent death. A sudden shocking realization or surprise startles the onlookers in the midst of chaos. The split-haired knight leaps off his horse and strikes the ground with a massive shockwave. The knight sprints towards the carriage to confront the goblins surrounding the remaining survivors. Standing over a fallen survivor, the knight coldly promises to slaughter all their attackers. The blonde survivor is left utterly stunned by the knight's chilling promise to fight alone. The knight arrogantly ignores the survivor's doubts, drawing his sword to face the enemy. A crimson light flashes in the knight's eye as his demonic power begins to awaken. Filled with rage, the knight unleashes a devastating scream, promising to shred the monsters. In a flash of red light, the knight brutally slices through multiple goblins at once. A goblin is sliced vertically in half, spraying blood as the battle reaches its peak. The two rescued survivors look up in absolute awe and terror at their savior. The split-haired knight grins as blood drips down, his expression dark and terrifying. Still trembling, the survivors stare at the frightening knight and question his mysterious identity. Looking at the carnage, the survivors wonder if their savior is actually a monster. The scene transitions to the glowing red horizon as the battle dust slowly settles. A red-haired female knight in white armor suddenly pauses, sensing an unusual energy nearby. The red-haired knight informs her blonde companion that they must head toward the trading post tomorrow. She reveals to the blonde archmage that she detects a powerful demonic energy in that direction. A title screen introduces the story's main theme about a role-playing protagonist. A glowing quest window appears before the knight, displaying his current objectives and survivor count. The knight complains about the realistic taste of monster blood, while the survivors express their gratitude. A system notification warns that victims attacked by demons risk falling to demonic corruption. The system explains the dangers of corruption as the panicked survivors discuss the lack of medicine. The knight suddenly remembers the game's corruption mechanic that he had previously overlooked. A system diagram illustrates how demonic corruption levels rise within a human body. The knight realizes he is completely immune to the corruption because of his half-demon class. He decides to search his inventory for helpful items to maximize his survivor rewards. The knight tosses a glowing green potion to the startled blonde survivor. The survivor reads the antidote's description and tearfully thanks the knight for saving them. The knight continues tossing medical supplies, including bandages and sedatives, to the grateful survivors. The survivor rallies the others to treat the wounded, while the knight feels pleased with his starting items. The survivor count drops, prompting the knight to wonder what to do next as hooves approach. The survivors cheer in relief as horse-drawn carriages arrive, signaling that reinforcements have finally come. A system window announces the successful completion of the rescue quest, much to the knight's satisfaction. The knight's jaw drops in confusion as a new quest prompt tasks him with body retrieval. He stands in silence, dreading the tedious chore of collecting corpses. The knight frowns deeply, realizing that performing menial labor will ruin his cool stoic persona. He decides to lean casually against a tree, waiting in the dark forest. Watching the survivors carry the bodies, the knight decides to let the NPCs do the work for him. The survivors complain about the knight's smug attitude as he stands idly with crossed arms. Overhearing their complaints, the knight inwardly laughs and tells them to keep grumbling. The knight happily rejoices in slacking off while the irritated survivors continue to do all the work. The split-haired knight wonders if the detailed dialogue about Western barbarians is foreshadowing a new story arc. The survivors notice a suspicious deficit of bodies, prompting confusion over where the dead could have gone. Angered by the guards' failure to handle the demons, a survivor vows to demand compensation from the Lord. The split-haired knight suspects a warlock or demon follower stole the bodies, anticipating a new investigation quest. An assistant calls for their return as a system notification confirms all objectives are successfully completed. The split-haired knight signals their departure as they prepare the horses and carriages in the forest. The disgruntled elderly guild master reluctantly welcomes the split-haired knight back, grudgingly praising his work. The split-haired knight stands in silence, maintaining his stoic and mysterious demeanor inside the guild. The elderly guild master defensively asks if he seems too poor to pay, calling the knight to wait. A sharp thud echoes as the elderly guild master strikes his cane down to offer another commission. The elderly guild master leans in close, offering to commission the split-haired knight once again. The split-haired knight coldly tells him to speak while the young client attempts to object. The elderly guild master clarifies that the new commission is for a demon extermination mission. Isrin objects that the Northwest Forest is already assigned, but the guildmaster yells about the prior group's failure. The elderly guildmaster declares he will not wait, choosing to send the knight based on his proven skills. Inwardly praising the guildmaster's admirable character, the split-haired knight asks if he must eliminate the forest demons. Isrin reluctantly agrees to arrange the quest immediately, while still worrying about the adventurers who already set out. The guildmaster dismisses the failed adventurers as unskilled, while Isrin reminds him about the cancellation fee. The young client nervously asks the split-haired knight if he intends to accept the quest. The young client suggests guiding the split-haired knight to an inn to discuss the details along the way. A new day dawns, shifting the scene to a bright sky filled with fluffy white clouds. A system notification announces their travel to the Northwest Forest as the carriage rolls down the street. Sitting in the carriage, the split-haired knight begins to ponder what kind of game he is playing. The split-haired knight trembles in discomfort, amazed that the game actually simulates his legs falling asleep. 10 hours in a horse carriage makes the split-haired knight wish the developers had included a fast travel skip button. The split-haired knight finds comfort in the blonde boy's awe, marveling at the realistic NPC behavior. The split-haired knight tries to stay patient, focusing on the massive financial reward that awaits him. The young client requests that the split-haired knight resolve the demon threat as quickly as possible. The split-haired knight asks about the reward, and the client reveals the bounty is 700,000 gil. The client quickly promises an additional 200,000 gal if the knight successfully eliminates the demon. A system notification reveals his negotiation skill is level 0, shocking him with the sudden price increase. The split-haired knight wonders if this is a scripted event, or if haggling is possible without the negotiation skill. Misinterpreting the knight's silence, the client desperately raises the reward by another 300,000 gal. Who needs a high negotiation skill when a silent stare successfully doubles the quest's payout? The split-haired knight declares an immediate departure, leaving the client startled by his intense haste. The split-haired knight dramatically asserts his refusal to waste time, while a demon remains at large. The split-haired knight displays a dark, intense look, fully immersed in his heroic and dramatic roleplay. The carriage arrives at a sunny village, bringing their grueling 10-hour journey to a close. The split-haired knight envisions massive wealth, dreaming of diving into the game's detailed real estate system. The young blonde boy turns to the split-haired knight and asks if he is an adventurer. Preferring to roleplay as a dark demon knight, the split-haired knight bluntly denies being a mere adventurer. The blonde boy looks dejected by the response, causing the split-haired knight to worry he was too blunt. The split-haired knight softens his response, offering to answer any questions the curious boy might have. The blonde boy's eyes sparkle with excitement as he asks the split-haired knight if he has ever seen the ocean. The split-haired knight poetically compares the blue ocean and its waves to the boy's eyes and curly hair. The carriage continues its journey through the peaceful village as the young blonde boy shouts in delight. As crows fly across a crimson sunset sky, a foreboding narration warns of an unexpected encounter. The split-haired knight blocks a heavy mace attack as the assailant accuses him of betraying God. Furious red-haired female knight screamingly vows to execute the split-haired knight in the name of God. A stylized title screen introduces Chapter 5 of the role-playing protagonist's story. Walking through the dark red forest, the split-haired knight steps cautiously on the path. He pauses as a sudden flash in his eye signals the activation of a skill. A green system notification reveals his newly unlocked enemy detection skill to sense hostility. He grins, realizing that finding a demon in this massive forest has just become incredibly easy. Suddenly, a warning window alerts him that a hostile target is within 10 meters. He turns to find the red-haired female knight accusing him of betraying God. Screaming in holy wrath, the red-haired female knight leaps forward with her glowing weapon. The split-haired knight watches her approach, his eye wide with sudden surprise. Instinctively, his hand grips the hilt of his sword to prepare for the clash. She swings her mace with immense force, shouting her vow to execute him. He blocks the heavy attack, inwardly worried about his weapon's durability tanking under the pressure. The impact sparks a bright light as they struggle against each other's strength. Backing away, the split-haired knight asks if she belongs to the Holy Order. The red-haired female knight glares at him, sternly confirming her mission to execute him. He's left utterly bewildered, wondering why a priest is trying to kill him. He questions her methods, but she angrily declares demons have no right to speak of violence. Her words echo in his mind, leaving him completely stunned and silent in the forest. Sweating in confusion, he desperately tries to understand why she thinks he is a demon. He wonders if he holds a cursed item, realizing his arm is demon-possessed. A sudden realization strikes him, causing him to pause as he considers his options. Looking at his sword, he decides this misunderstanding is the perfect role-playing opportunity. A narrative screen explains that he wears a gauntlet out of disgust for his demon-possessed arm. Fully leaning into his dark persona, he furiously commands her not to call him a fanatic. He dramatically points his sword toward the red moon, proclaiming victory and glory to heaven. Annoyed by his dramatic display, she yells at him for mimicking a true knight. She leaps down at him with her glowing mace, demanding he submit to judgment. He realizes that since he was never officially knighted, he won't fight honorably. She is infuriated as he vanishes into the darkness, calling him a cunning coward. Activating his breaker skill, he coats his sword in dark energy for a powerful downward strike. She barely raises her massive shield in time, groaning under the pressure of his dark strike. His dark purple energy collides heavily with her shield, creating a powerful shockwave. He walks forward casually, mocking her for cowering behind her shield like a baby turtle. Stung by his mockery, she prepares to unleash a powerful holy buff from her weapon. She raises her glowing weapon high, declaring that God is with her as light erupts. The brilliant holy light temporarily blinds the split-haired knight, forcing him to shield his eyes. He looks on in envy, realizing she has activated a powerful full-body buff. He watches her charge, calculating the active damage multipliers and class matchups. She rushes forward with immense speed, spreading blinding holy light instead of striking directly. Confident in his superior speed, he unleashes a rapid flurry of dark slashes. His frustration grows as his fast attacks are completely absorbed by her massive shield. Grimacing, He realizes that breaking through her formidable defense head-on is impossible. He leaps backward to create distance, deciding to exploit her slow movement speed. She pursues him aggressively, calling for the apostate to face her head-on. He watches her approach with a focused and calm expression, planning his next move. He charges forward, clashing his dark-imbued sword directly against her massive shield. Stepping onto her shield, he uses her heavy gear to disrupt her balance and slow her down. Airborne above her, he raises his sword to deliver a decisive, finishing blow. He shouts a final warning as he descends upon the vulnerable red-haired female knight. He delivers a massive downward strike that shatters her guard and sparks a powerful shockwave. She groans in intense pain as the dark energy completely overwhelms her defense. Narrator highlights the swift capabilities of a demon knight as the split-haired knight launches an attack, surprising the red-haired female knight. The split-haired knight charges rapidly, demanding she pay for her words, as a spell is cast to consume him in flames. A wall of fire erupts with a sudden crackle, blocking his advance and shocking the split-haired knight. A mysterious newcomer walking in an ornate blue robe remarks on the red-haired inquisitor's unexpected struggle. The white-furred, lion-like archmage arrives, holding a glowing staff and offering her assistance to the inquisitor. The red-haired inquisitor joyfully welcomes the archmage's arrival, while the split-haired knight stands watchfully in the background. The split-haired knight is left completely confused by the mention of an inquisitor and an archmage. The split-haired knight realizes his opponents are third advancement classes from the priest and mage branches. The split-haired knight observes his opponents, realizing they form a high-level healer tank and ranged DPS combination. The split-haired knight sweats in anxiety, remembering that he is merely a low-level beginner who just finished the tutorial. The split-haired knight stands before his two formidable opponents, silently questioning the fairness of the situation. The split-haired knight is exasperated, complaining about the extreme unfairness of targeting a beginner player. The split-haired knight envisions his struggle as a tiny egg facing giant mountains, wondering if victory is possible. The trembling egg character shakes with anxiety, dreading a brutal defeat without a pain-mute option. The split-haired knight bites his glove in panic, realizing the death penalty is an even greater concern than pain. A sudden realization strikes the split-haired knight, making him wonder if this impossible matchup is scripted. Standing alone in the dark frame, the split-haired knight wonders if his defeat is a predetermined story beat. He reasons that death might be a scripted tutorial event to unlock standard quality-of-life features. A bright light bulb flashes as the split-haired knight cheerfully accepts his fate, ready to die in peace. Resolute in his decision, the split-haired knight resolves to stand his ground rather than retreat. The split-haired knight decides to fully enjoy his final moments, determined to go out in dramatic style. Leaning into his dark roleplay, the split-haired knight mockingly insults the archmage for threatening people alongside a reckless child. The red-haired inquisitor furiously retorts, accusing him of contracting with demons and defending the archmage's actions. A sudden red system notification alerts the split-haired knight that a hostile target is within 10 meters. Hearing a strange, faint hissing sound, the split-haired knight warily wonders if another enemy reinforcement is arriving. A massive, terrifying serpent with glowing crimson scales emerges and coils around the forest path. White-furred archmage identifies the beast as Medusa, while the chibi split-haired knight comically complains about her stealing his line. The red-haired inquisitor points accusingly, claiming the split-haired knight summoned the giant serpent as his ally. The split-haired knight smugly suggests that the inquisitor's holy light must have blinded her to think the serpent is his ally. The red-haired inquisitor vows to shred the demon first, and then tear the split-haired knight's mouth apart. As Medusa opens its giant maw, the split-haired knight ecstatically recognizes this as a scripted story event. Grateful to the developers for not being heartless, the split-haired knight prepares to use the serpent to his advantage. With a menacing, manic grin, the split-haired knight dramatically declares that he will grant them death. The split-haired knight suddenly dashes forward, leaving the inquisitor shouting in anger while the archmage warns her to wait. The archmage watches in concern as the split-haired knight attacks, planning to bypass the tedious task of scattering the snakes. Rejecting the slow traditional method as too tedious, the split-haired knight charges his blade with dark energy. The split-haired knight unleashes a massive strike directly into the center of the serpent's coiled body. The split-haired knight ruthlessly slices through the writhing snakes, showering the clearing in a spray of blood. Shedding blood as he dives in, the split-haired knight aims directly for the serpent's anatomical heart. The split-haired knight spots the bright red snake hidden deep within the core and shouts in triumph. With a swift swish, the split-haired knight tosses his sword aside, reasoning that close range requires bare hands. The split-haired knight plunges his bare hand directly into the snake pile, causing a massive splash of blood. The split-haired knight pulls his blood-covered arm back, triumphantly holding the writhing red snake by its neck. The split-haired knight crushes the red snake's head, instantly defeating the beast in a spectacular spray of blood. The split-haired knight stands victorious in the crimson-lit forest as the remaining snakes scatter into the dark bushes. The defeated red snake falls lifeless to the ground as the split-haired knight walks past it. With a heavy crunch, the split-haired knight stamps his boot down to crush the snake completely. The blood-stained split-haired knight struggles to stay upright as exhaustion sets in after the intense battle. The split-haired knight suddenly collapses face down on the ground, leaving his two opponents looking on in shock. His bloody sword rests in the ground as a voice comments on his unexpected wits. The blood-stained split-haired knight mockingly commends his opponents for staying out of his deadly battle. He menacingly threatens to violently rip the red-haired inquisitor's mouth open as a reward. The white-furred archmage quickly apologizes for the attack, pleading with him to hear their explanation. Red-haired inquisitor questions the confrontation, but the white-furred archmage clarifies that he is no demon contractor. The stunned inquisitor cannot comprehend how someone can use demonic power without being a contractor. As the inquisitor begs for an explanation, the archmage explains his class is merely a theoretical legend. The split-haired knight happily eats popcorn in his mind, eager to hear their lore explanation about himself. The archmage explains how he suppressed his demonic possession to control its power instead of becoming a mindless zombie. The inquisitor vehemently protests, claiming human will cannot suppress a demon without divine power. The white-furred archmage calmly reminds her that nothing is truly impossible in this world. The archmage gestures to the living proof, standing right before their eyes as a theoretical miracle. The split-haired knight dryly interrupts their discussion, asking if they are finished whispering right in front of him. Leaning heavily into his dark role-play, he dramatically insults them for comparing him to a mindless zombie. The archmage humbly offers compensation for their error, though the knight privately doubts he will receive anything valuable. He fiercely demands to know if they would cut out their own tongues to satisfy his request. When they hesitate, the split-haired knight coldly rejects their apologies as empty and pathetic gestures. He declares he will not lower himself to a demon's level by violently tearing off their jaws. Turning his back, the split-haired knight delivers a final cold command for them to get lost. Internally, the player is ecstatic, marveling at how perfectly the game's advanced AI accommodates his dramatic roleplay. While walking away, the knight suddenly stops as he remembers he must retrieve the giant snake's corpse. A sudden command to wait interrupts him just as he picks up the blood-covered snake corpse. The knight internally groans, wondering if the NPCs are going to dispute his claim to the corpse. The red-haired inquisitor steps forward, much to the nervous anxiety of the quest-focused newbie player. The red-haired inquisitor urgently requests that he listen to her words as well. The split-haired knight is immediately intrigued, wondering if this confrontation is triggering a lucrative new quest. Stepping forward under the night sky, the red-haired inquisitor announces that she must offer an apology too. The knight is caught off guard as the inquisitor sincerely apologizes for attacking him first without excuse. He is bewildered by her polite attitude, expecting a proud, stubborn elite NPC to keep acting hostile. Her polite, humble apology becomes so intense that the awkward player quickly forgives the misunderstanding. She promises real compensation for her mistake, prompting the player to wonder if this is a companion recruitment. The player quickly dismisses the companion idea, deciding it completely clashes with his dark, edgy persona. Fearing future trouble, He rejects her offer as mere hypocrisy to maintain his roleplay identity. The Inquisitor desperately objects to being called a hypocrite, but the Archmage calmly tells her to settle. The Archmage reminds the Inquisitor that they must depart to report their completed purification mission. Looking visibly dejected, the red-haired Inquisitor quietly concedes that the Archmage is indeed correct. The sound of heavy footsteps echoes through the forest as they prepare to make a hasty departure. Characters go their separate ways, stepping into the dark forest paths in opposite directions. Walking quietly through the undergrowth, his boots crush the leaves in the quiet forest night. The white-furred Archmage strides forward silently, her ornate blue robe brushing against the grass. Suddenly pausing, the split-haired knight is deeply unsettled to realize his path is still being shadowed. He looks back in growing annoyance, questioning why the two female warriors are persistently following him. He consults his glowing system map, wondering if they are somehow tracking his path back to town. While the two happily chat about their successful purification, the trailing player grows increasingly frustrated. Stopping in his tracks, the knight turns to demand why they have ignored his orders to get lost. The white-furred Archmage quickly offers her polite apologies, clarifying that causing offense was never their intention. He reveals a glowing pathfinding spell, explaining that they merely share the exact same destination. The dumbfounded player realizes they are simply following their own version of a pathfinding navigation system. Flushing with embarrassment, the split-haired knight quickly hurries away to avoid any further awkward interactions. The red-haired Inquisitor calls out in concern, warning him that the forest is highly dangerous at night. Maintaining his edgy roleplay to the end, he scoffs at her warning before marching off alone. The red-haired Inquisitor watches anxiously, muttering that wandering the dark woods alone is a terrible idea. The red-haired Inquisitor asks the white-furred Archmage if letting the mysterious warrior leave is wise. He warns that the warrior's immense power would trigger a catastrophe if a demon ever consumed him. The white-furred Archmage confesses he has never seen such a case, hoping the warrior avoids corruption. Acknowledging that hope differs from reality, the Archmage reveals he cast a tracking spell on the departing knight. He quietly offers a prayer for divine grace to protect the solitary traveler in the dark. Under the ominous gaze of a bright full moon, crows scatter across the night sky. The quiet town sits peacefully illuminated beneath the starry night sky. The blood-stained knight walks silently through the empty town streets under the glow of street lamps. Entering the guild, the warrior startles Isrin, who politely explains that it is too late to submit quests. Recognizing his terrifying blood-soaked form, she gasps in pure terror and identifies him as the legendary demon knight. Silent Knight thrusts forward a heavy blood-stained sack, demanding she verify the contents. Stunned by his impossibly swift return, the flustered receptionist immediately rushes to process his submission. Opening the bag, she reacts in confusion and disgust upon finding a coiled snake carcass inside. Sudden realization strikes her, leaving her wide-eyed and trembling with disbelief. She screams in disbelief that he defeated the forest demon so quickly, while he silently laments his exhausting journey. He recalls turning his back on the potential companions to set off alone into the wilderness. He quickly regretted his dramatic exit upon realizing how brutally far the forest was from town. He desperately hoped the game wouldn't force him to walk the entire distance back. Panels depict him trudging endlessly through day and night as his hopes of a fast travel system shatter. Arriving at the town, he curses the game's brutal lack of mobility after walking for an entire day. Camping was impossible due to the aggressively realistic wildlife, making his outdoor rest incredibly stressful. He admits he nearly wept with joy when the town's entry notification finally appeared before him. Isrin confirms that the slain monster was indeed Medusa, validating his successful quest completion. She promises to verify the final details at dawn and quickly process his well-earned quest rewards. An official notification confirms his success as he staggers from exhaustion, lamenting his diminished stamina. Isrin recommends a local inn, prompting the exhausted warrior to silently thank his full dive technology. He summons a young guild helper, instructing him to guide the exhausted knight to a nearby inn. The energetic boy cheerfully leads the way, a pleasant contrast to the knight's grumpy exhaustion. When the curious boy eagerly asks about his battle, the knight sternly rebukes him. The boy quickly apologizes in fear, leaving the knight feeling guilty for ruining the child's mood. Watching the dejected child walk ahead, the knight resolves to give him a very generous tip. Collapsing onto a soft bed, he weakly wonders if he should simply quit this grueling game. He complains about the extreme realism of the fatigue stat, which makes his real body feel exhausted. Deciding to sleep before making any rash decisions about rage quitting, he prepares for a long rest. He taps the glowing screen to set his sleep timer for exactly 6 hours. As he drifts into deep sleep, the room door quietly creaks open in the shadow. An intruder slips inside and raises a heavy spiked club high above the sleeping knight's head. The warrior's eyes snap open as a red system alert warns of a nearby threat. In a flash of steel and sparks, the knight blocks the deadly club's strike with his sword. The angry bandit curses as the knight furiously retorts, demanding to know what the intruder thinks he is doing. The knight blows his attacker back while internally criticizing his useless close-range detection skill. The bandit stumbles back, utterly shocked by the sleeping warrior's immense physical power. Rising swiftly from the bed, the knight unleashes a powerful slash that cuts down his attacker. The bleeding bandit drops to his knees, desperately begging for mercy over a petty attempted robbery. He orders the bandit to disarm, privately amused that his edgy persona is acting like a policeman. The heavy spiked club falls to the wooden floor with a loud, final clatter. The bandit begs for his life as the knight mockingly questions his lethal method of stealing coin purses. Feigning surrender, the desperate bandit suddenly lunges forward with a hidden dagger in a surprise counterattack. With effortless grace, the knight sidesteps the clumsy thrust, positioning his blade to deliver a swift end. The split-haired knight strikes the robber, who coughs in pain as he is sent flying back. Standing over the fallen robber, the split-haired knight mockingly questions the robber's foolish attempt to kill him with a weak weapon. Grabbing the robber's collar, the knight inwardly complains about being targeted by thieves while he is completely exhausted. Kicking the door open, the knight drags the robber out, wondering what kind of game event is occurring. Dragging the robber down the hallway, the knight approaches the front desk where the receptionist is fast asleep. The knight drops the robber on the floor, completely startling the receptionist, who gasps in alarm. Emitting a dark aura, the knight apologizes for his temper, but demands to be left alone to sleep. The receptionist screams in terror, completely misunderstanding the situation as the knight looks on in confusion. The receptionist screams about a murder, prompting the knight to angrily point out that the robber is still alive. A system notification warns that a hostile target has entered a 10-meter radius, alerting the knight. The red-haired inquisitor bursts in with a loud crash, furiously accusing him of committing a murder. She yells in righteous fury, declaring that a sentient zombie can never be trusted. The red-haired inquisitor unleashes a heavy strike with her mace, which the split-haired knight barely blocks. Blocking the attack, the knight gets annoyed by the recurring NPC's habit of appearing in misleading situations. The red-haired inquisitor turns sharply, her green eyes filled with hostility as she prepares to attack again. Under the night sky inside the guild, the two warriors face off in a tense confrontation. The knight threatens to kill her. She continues following him, privately enjoying how his roleplay switch flips. System prompt options mockingly list typical righteous dialogue selections for the confrontational priest. The knight imagines the inquisitor repeatedly mashing generic righteous slogans amidst explosions in her mind. Brandishing her mace, the red-haired inquisitor demands silence, calling him a filthy demon occupying a human body. Dropping into a low combat stance, she prepares her weapon with intense focus. Smirking, the split-haired knight coldly remarks that she seems remarkably eager to meet her end. Drawing his dark-infused blade, the knight warns her to step aside to avoid useless conflict. The knight's eye narrows with lethal intent as he prepares to strike. The split-haired knight unleashes a swift, powerful slash with his dark, aura-coated sword. Glowing magical chains suddenly wrap around the knight, trapping him in a crowd control spell. The knight recognizes the magic as a standard crowd control skill that temporarily restricts a target's movement. The white-furred archmage steps forward and pleads for everyone to stop, prompting the knight to notice her arrival. Inwardly deciding to struggle for roleplay purposes, the knight fiercely threatens to mutilate her if she interferes. The red-haired inquisitor turns in confusion, questioning why the archmage is telling her to halt. With a sudden burst of immense dark power, the split-haired knight shatters the magical chains. The red-haired inquisitor is caught completely off guard, gasping in shock at his incredible strength. A massive explosion of dark energy erupts, sending a powerful shockwave through the room. The terrified receptionist cowers behind her desk, letting out a panicked shriek. The white-furred archmage looks on in speechless disbelief at the warrior's terrifying display of power. The split-haired knight raises his dark, aura-covered blade, ready to confront his opponents. Emitting an oppressive darkness, the knight stands before the two warriors as they watch him warily. Sweat dripping down her face, the inquisitor wonders in disbelief how he broke the archmage's spell so easily. A close-up shows the knight standing in tense silence, his dark eyes hidden in shadow. The knight's chibi self reflects that the binding skill was notoriously overpowered in the original game. A community forum page displays endless player complaints demanding a nerf for the broken crowd control skill. Commenters on the forum complain about the broken rankings and express frustration over the overpowered mage class. The white-furred archmage urges both parties to calm down, explaining that this is simply another misunderstanding. The red-haired inquisitor objects frantically, claiming she saw him commit a murder with her own eyes. The white-furred archmage firmly rebukes her, asking if her hatred has completely blinded her judgment. The archmage tells her to look closely at their surroundings to see if anyone has actually died. Turning around, the inquisitor is shocked to see the groaning robber crawling on the floor in fear. Her face turns blank with sheer disbelief, as she realizes the robber is actually still alive. Turning back to the knight, the inquisitor stares in stunned silence, asking for confirmation that the man is alive. Maintaining his dark, edgy roleplay persona, the player happily reflects that he successfully avoided actually killing the robber. The white-furred archmage politely asks the knight to explain the situation, admitting their initial attack was shameless. The archmage points out that the other anxious guests have gathered, while the knight wonders when they arrived. The knight sternly demands the trembling robber to confess, prompting the terrified thief to beg for his life. The knight menacingly demands a confession, forcing the terrified robber to admit he was after the warrior's money. The robber explains he targeted the knight after seeing him give a generous tip, shocking the priest. The knight lets out a tired sigh, relieved that the frustrating misunderstanding has finally been resolved. The knight advises the receptionist to improve security before taking his leave as she calls after him. The knight appreciates the convenience of his digital inventory as he walks away, eager to find rest. As the knight walks away, he suddenly wonders why the priest and mage seem so familiar. The knight recalls the dark and chaotic nature of their previous encounter, just as the priest calls out. The split-haired knight pauses and looks back over his shoulder with a sharp glance. The red-haired priest stares in absolute shock, her eyes wide with sudden recognition. The red-haired priest's stunned expression is reflected in the narrow, dark gaze of the knight. A sudden realization of trouble hits the knight as he mentally curses the unexpected situation. The red-haired priest stands frozen in the doorway, gripping her steel mace with hesitation. The knight examines her face closely, trying to place her identity. He recognizes her fiery red hair braided in the classic Death Flag hairstyle. The knight notes her sparkling green eyes, solidifying his growing suspicion. The knight realizes she is an official character representing the priest class from the original game. The white-furred archmage runs to her side, advising her to think calmly before speaking. Watching the archmage, the knight realizes she is also an official character from the game. The feline archmage is revealed to be Mace, another official major character from the original game. The knight reflects that other class characters only appeared in the original game if they were players. The knight wonders if the game is forcing him to form a party with these NPCs. The knight's chibi self expresses his intense dislike for party play, preferring his solo roleplay concept. Deciding to test the system's freedom, the knight coldly asks the priest if she understands the word silence. The knight mockingly questions her, prompting the panicked priest to stammer that she only wished to apologize. The priest squeezes her eyes shut, overwhelmed by guilt and the weight of her mistake. The priest drops to her knees, shouting that her insulting actions cannot be atoned for with words. The desperate priest dramatically declares that the knight may take her head if her apology is insufficient. The knight stands in speechless shock, staring down at the priest's dramatic display of penance. A tense silence stretches as the knight stands frozen, taken aback by her extreme reaction. The priest remains kneeling in a deep, submissive bow, waiting for the warrior's judgment. The knight's chibi self sweats profusely in absolute bewilderment, wondering if the priest is completely insane. The knight internally complains that he merely prefers solo play, baffled by the priest's bizarrely extreme escalation. The bewildered knight glances at the archmage, wondering who taught the priest such extreme behavior. The knight notices that the sweating archmage looks just as panicked and helpless as he feels. The knight frantically wishes the archmage would intervene, realizing refusing the apology would break his dark character's roleplay. The feline archmage nervously glances over her shoulder, feeling the pressure of the awkward situation. The archmage closes her eyes in deep anxiety, desperately trying to figure out a solution. From the archmage's perspective, the knight appears as an incredibly terrifying demon cloaked in oppressive darkness. Terrified but determined, the archmage steps forward and pleads with the knight to show some tolerance. The archmage begs the knight to punish her instead, explaining the young inquisitor is naive to the world. The priest frantically objects, shouting that the archmage shouldn't take blame for her own mistakes. As the archmage begs for mercy, the priest stubbornly insists on taking full responsibility for her actions. The knight realizes both NPCs are completely hopeless, deciding he must handle the situation himself. Finding the dramatic situation amusing, the knight decides to play along and reaches into his inventory pouch. Maintaining his menacing dark persona, the knight declares he gave a choice as he draws a glowing blue sword. The knight casually kicks a dark sword sheath across the stone floor toward the kneeling priest. The knight drops his blade and grabs her braided hair, intensifying his dark aura. A sharp blade slices through the air, cleanly severing the red-haired priest's braided hair. The white-furred, feline archmage winces in distress, deeply affected by the knight's sudden action. Sweating profusely, the red-haired priest kneels on the floor in absolute shock and disbelief. Under the glowing full moon, the split-haired knight looks back with a calm, imposing demeanor. The severed red braid floats gently down, marking a dramatic change in her fate. Touching her shortened hair, the red-haired priest gasps as she realizes what just happened. Sweating and gritting her teeth, the red-haired priest struggles to comprehend the warrior's sudden strike. The red-haired priest desperately asks for an explanation as the split-haired knight begins walking away. The split-haired knight secretly gloats about his masterful roleplay, saving her life without breaking character. The knight recalls a mace-wielding sister from the prologue, noting her striking resemblance to the priest. The red-haired priest stands in bewilderment, while the feline archmage nervously watches the knight depart. The knight coldly warns her to watch her mouth, quietly pleased with removing her death flag. The split-haired knight delivers a parting threat of execution before walking away into the night. The archmage comforts the priest, while the knight reflects on his heroic intervention. The split-haired knight smugly anticipates that the game's official NPCs will inevitably follow him anyway. Shifting to a joyful mood, the knight happily celebrates his solo player triumph as he walks. In a somber tone, the red-haired priest addresses the feline archmage to begin their discussion. The feline archmage confirms her theory that the knight's formidable power suggests demonic possession. The red-haired priest sympathetically reasons that the knight must have suffered immensely because of demons. Clenching her fist, the priest reflects deeply on the immeasurable hatred the knight must carry. The feline archmage questions how the knight could walk away so calmly, despite his power. The feline archmage concludes that the knight's surprising restraint is a sign of true tolerance. A massive, multi-eyed demon looms over the knight, illustrating his intense inner struggle and victory. The red-haired priest is deeply moved, reflecting on the strength of the knight's heart. Kneeling by her severed braid, the red-haired priest laments her own lack of understanding. While the archmage offers comfort, The red-haired priest suddenly interrupts with a dramatic realization. The red-haired priest rises dynamically, shouting her absolute determination to have the knight join them. Holding her severed hair, the red-haired priest's green eyes sparkle with newfound zeal and resolve. Shifting the mood, the white-furred archmage smiles warmly and peacefully at her companion's determination. The feline archmage wears a serene, proud expression as she looks ahead. Under the starry night sky, both companions gaze up at the bright full moon in awe. A digital system notification confirms that approximately 2 days remain until the full dive ends. A new day begins as birds fly across a bright, cloud-filled sky over the town. The scene shifts to the exterior of another nearby inn, under the morning sun. Inside the bustling tavern, various patrons chat and dine at wooden tables. A gloved hand forcefully drives a fork into a juicy steak, cutting into the meal. The split-haired knight calmly raises a piece of steak, looking slightly irritated. The red-haired priest and the feline archmage suddenly appear right in front of the knight. The knight's internal self sarcastically praises them for tracking him down so quickly after his rest. The knight coldly demands if they are mocking him, while privately resolving not to ruin his food. The feline archmage frantically begs the knight to hear them out, promising no inconvenience. Dismissing them immediately, the split-haired knight stands up from his table to make his exit. The knight bluntly states their presence is a nuisance, leaving the red-haired priest utterly stammering. The red-haired priest bows deeply, loudly pleading to learn from his incredible tolerance. Crimson-faced and blushing, the red-haired priest grits her teeth in a mixture of shame and passion. A wave of absolute confusion washes over the split-haired knight as he stands completely frozen. Surrounded by glowing digital code, the knight frantically questions if his choices glitched the game. The red-haired priest regretfully confesses that she failed to uphold her lifelong teachings of humility. Clenching her hands, the priest humbly acknowledges his endless patience, despite her previous insults. Backed by glowing angelic wings, the red-haired priest passionately declares her desire to follow his path. The red-haired priest stammeringly begs for understanding, leaving the split-haired knight sighing in mental exhaustion. The knight feels completely run over by his own overwhelming affection for her archetypal character. He admits defeat, realizing this earnest and awkward priest perfectly checks every box of his favorite character traits. While internally squealing over how precious she is, the split-haired knight struggles to maintain his menacing exterior. He forces himself to stay in character, though his fierce look only frightens the priest further. Seeing his stern expression, the red-haired priest nervously panics, fearing she has crossed a line again. Her adorable anxiety strikes a direct, overwhelming blow to the knight's hidden otaku heart. Stealing his resolve, the split-haired knight coldly scoffs that her persistence is an irritating attempt to ruin his mood. He mockingly questions if she is seeking death, prompting the white-furred archmage to desperately plead for his attention. As the knight cold-heartedly prepares to draw his sword, the archmage suddenly shouts the name of Satan. The white-furred archmage boldly questions if he would still turn his blade against those hunting the Demon King. The mention of the Supreme Demon King catches the split-haired knight completely off guard. Gaining sudden interest, the knight lowers his hand to his weapon and demands to hear more. Demandingly presses them to explain the true meaning behind their unexpected declaration. The heavy silence hangs in the room as both companions nervously gulp under his oppressive presence. Both companions exchange tense glances, realizing they have walked directly into a highly volatile situation. They perceive a terrifying, cold hatred radiating from his eye, assuming he harbors an unmatched animosity toward demons. Realizing any deceit would mean instant death, the priest clenches her fist, resolved to speak only the absolute truth. Driven by her sacred duty, the red-haired priest prepares to risk her life for her holy mission. Facing his dark and imposing figure, the priest prepares to reveal her secret with absolute sincerity. Internally, the split-haired knight is absolutely thrilled that the game's major storyline is already unfolding. The narrative explains the historical and formidable role of the Holy Inquisitors who serve the temple. Within the lore, these Inquisitors act as elite holy agents, executing divine judgment across the lands. The white-furred archmage begins explaining the mysterious circumstances surrounding the young priest's departure from her temple. The archmage reveals that her journey began with a powerful divine revelation bestowed upon her. The red-haired priest explains her sacred burden of destiny to vanquish the supreme demon king. She explains that the divine message commanded her to assemble powerful allies for her quest. Having teamed up with the archmage, she was searching for the companions foretold in her vision. The archmage concludes that this grand destiny is why they risked his anger to recruit him. The priest's nervous questioning causes the archmage to clear her throat awkwardly under the knight's glare. The knight is internally overwhelmed with affection, desperately fighting a massive grin at her innocence. He suddenly pauses as a mechanical plot discrepancy strikes him, questioning why she received the player's quest. He internally wonders if this game update shifted the entire primary narrative focus onto the priest. Sensing his deep, silent brooding, the white-furred archmage frantically tries to break the heavy tension. The archmage formally invites him to join their crusade, triggering a sharp, glowing system alert. A floating golden notification appears, officially introducing the legendary main quest to slay the Demon King. The archmage notes that his legendary reputation for demon slaying makes him their ideal companion. Her bright blue eyes lock onto him with absolute focus, awaiting his crucial decision. The split-haired knight silently reflects on the bizarre reality of this priest acting as the chosen savior. The red-haired priest proposes they travel together to the temple to verify her divine, chosen status. She promises that any holy temple will undeniably validate the truth of her grand destiny. A suspenseful silence fills the tavern as they wait with bated breath for his final answer. The split-haired knight narrows his single eye, maintaining a heavy and intimidating silence. He delivers a stern, low-voiced warning, demanding that their claims be completely authentic. System messages confirm both the Inquisitor and Archmage have officially joined his party, bringing them pure relief. The main quest updates, directing him to coordinate with his newly acquired holy allies. Under a bright sky, a horse-drawn carriage travels down the cobblestone streets of the town. Local stable workers watch curiously as the grand carriage pulls in to make it stop. Various townspeople offer requests and rewards, attempting to distract the legendary warrior with side quests. He calmly ignores the distractions, fully committed to his dark persona and the main campaign ahead. The split-haired knight narrows his single eye, pausing mid-thought with a lingering hesitation. The split-haired knight wonders why the red-haired priest keeps staring at him like that. The split-haired knight feels extremely uncomfortable under the priest's persistent, unwavering gaze during their journey. The priest's sparkling green eyes intensely reflect the stern figure of the split-haired knight. The red-haired priest feels guilty, recalling how she previously insulted and trash-talked the knight. The knight figures that her affinity stat for him must be at absolute rock bottom. A system window explains companion mechanics, noting that NPC behaviors change based on hidden affinity levels. The knight remembers delivering harsh warnings to ensure they never expected friendly treatment from him. The knight wonders if the priest's default affinity is high because she is an early-game NPC. The red-haired priest beams happily, surrounded by cute, animated dumpling illustrations representing her adorable nature. The knight internally codenames the adorable priest as his precious little kimchi dumpling. The knight finds the priest's intense, wide-eyed passion and unique haircut incredibly cute and adorable. Watching his two new companions, the split-haired knight internally glows with proud parental affection. The feline archmage addresses her companion with deep warmth and gentle sincerity. The feline archmage questions why the knight has not asked about their revelation or destination. The knight silently reminds himself that they are merely game characters following a set script. A stern warning outlines that any falsehood in their revelation will result in swift destruction. The knight coldly demands they share any vital warnings before they proceed with the journey. The feline archmage points out that his words almost sound like a gesture of trust. The archmage reasons that the powerful knight likely just disregards trivial, Every day matters entirely. The carriage travels steadily along a sun-dappled cobblestone path, winding through a dense green forest. The priest explains their sacred duty to help others, which the knight immediately dismisses as petty. The knight cuts straight to business, demanding details about the demon's type and estimated numbers. The priest admits they lack specific details, earning a harsh insult from the irritated knight. A system notification pops up, revealing their destination is actually a side quest rather than the main campaign. The knight quickly shrugs off the discrepancy, deciding that any progress is acceptable. The knight laments the slow, tedious pace of the carriage as they travel through the woods. Feeling the weariness of the long trip, the feline archmage decides to close her eyes and rest. The knight plans to sleep, assuming his companions will wake him once they finally arrive. The red-haired priest watches him with a warm, gentle smile and a faint blush. The young priest sits in quiet prayer under a beautiful beam of bright blue moonlight. The feline archmage knocks on the door, politely asking for permission to enter the priest's room. Creaking open the heavy wooden door, the archmage states that they need to talk. The feline archmage solemnly reminds the priest of the grave gravity of offering her life away. The archmage emphasizes the crucial importance of the divine mission, riding solely on the priest's life. The priest humbly agrees with the archmage's reprimand, admitting she spoke impulsively and irresponsibly. The priest points out that she had also nearly taken the life of an innocent man. A profound reflection notes that justice is merely justified violence and must be handled with caution. The archmage warns the young priest never to be absolutely certain of her own justice. The feline archmage solemnly recites the temple's 9th commandment to emphasize her point. Clenching her hands, the priest shudders to think how many innocent lives her ignorance might have taken. The young priest deeply laments her own unworthiness to serve as the chosen savior. She reflects that the knight's unexpected mercy offered her a true path to enlightenment. With renewed resolve, the priest declares that his mercy brought her closer to her mission. The priest compares the knight's righteous presence to a messenger delivering divine teachings. Meanwhile, the split-haired knight sleeps deeply and peacefully, completely unaware of their discussion. The young priest clasps her hands in deep prayer, her face glowing with genuine happiness. The horse-drawn carriage travels further along the quiet road, heading toward a distant mountain peak. Arriving at their destination under the cover of night, the knight gazes over a quiet town. Standing under the full moon, the knight grumbles about the 3 tedious days wasted on travel. The split-haired knight laments the high cost of his full dive solution wasted on tedious travel. The split-haired knight resolves to clear the quest quickly before his time limit expires as his quest updates. The red-haired priestess eagerly suggests heading to the temple, only to find the knight already walking ahead. The red-haired priestess runs to catch up with the knight while the feline archmage follows behind. The feline archmage sighs about the difficulty of keeping up with their fast pace. An ear on the white-furred archmage's hood twitches as she senses something unusual. The white-furred archmage bows her head, feeling an inexplicable sense of uneasiness. A flock of black crows flutters through the moonlit sky, casting an ominous shadow. The grand, imposing temple stands silent under the starry sky as feathers drift down. A pair of black-leather boots steps firmly onto the patterned blue floor of the temple corridor. The split-haired knight stares forward calmly as several silver spears are thrust toward him. Temple guard blocks the path with his shield and sword, declaring the knight a demon. The knight halts his advance with a sudden tap of his boot on the floor. A loud declaration echoes through the hall, urging everyone to stand down because the knight is not an enemy. The red-haired priestess rushes forward, raising her hand to reveal a glowing holy mark on her palm. The temple guard stares in shock, recognizing the sacred mark of the hero on her hand. The red-haired priestess swears on her title that the knight is a victim of demons, not a minion. The guards murmur in doubt, questioning the priestess's claim because of the strong demonic presence. The white-furred archmage grips her glowing staff, preparing to intervene. The archmage slams her staff onto the ground, releasing a powerful wave of blue energy. The feline archmage demands absolute silence from the temple guards, asserting her authority. The Archmage sternly commands the guards to obey the hero and lower their weapons. The red-haired temple guard nods, conceding to the Archmage's command. The guards lower their weapons, stating they will obey the words of God's proxy. The temple guard politely offers to guide the group inside the temple halls. The Archmage asks the knight to be patient, but he coldly replies that they would already be dead otherwise. The knight is internally overjoyed, thrilled by how satisfyingly the NPCs resolved the misunderstanding. The split-haired knight walks forward with a dark, imposing posture as his companions watch him anxiously. The knight amusedly notes how funny it is that the temple guards are walking on eggshells around him. The knight temporarily puts his amusement aside as his thoughts turn serious. The knight feels a sudden wave of physical exhaustion from the extreme realism of the game. The knight resolves to leave immediately after obtaining the necessary information. Moonlight streams through the high Gothic windows, casting patterns on the quiet temple floor. The bishop concludes their discussion, stating they have gathered enough information about the case. The bishop kindly advises the weary travelers to rest in the prepared guest rooms. The bishop offers in-room dining, which the knight cynically interprets as a command to remain locked away. The knight defends his cynical thoughts, noting the bishop's passive-aggressive attitude throughout their meeting. The knight decides he is done role-playing for the night, finding it mentally draining. The split-haired knight abruptly turns and flatly refuses the bishop's hospitality. The bishop gasps in shock as the knight declares he would rather sleep in dirt than among hypocrites. A quest update prompts the knight to investigate the village, confident he already knows the demon's identity. The priestess and archmage cry out in alarm as the knight walks away from the meeting. The red-haired priestess chases after the knight, pleading with him to wait a moment. The priestess reaches out and tightly grabs the knight's silver-armored arm to stop him. The knight forcefully slaps her hand away, creating a sudden flash of hostile red light. The knight glares back with an icy, menacing look, warning her never to touch him again. The red-haired priestess tearfully apologizes, looking deeply hurt and startled by his harsh reaction. The archmage comforts the distressed priestess before asking the knight where he is heading. The knight replies that the answer is obvious, stating he is going to slay the demon. The knight happily decides to ditch his companions to avoid wasting time, and skip the tedious quest steps. Resolving to follow the knight, the red-haired priestess insists on accompanying him on his quest. The feline archmage smirks, deeply satisfied by the priestess's sudden display of loyalty and resolve. An off-screen remark from the bishop acknowledges his own shame compared to her righteous dedication. The feline archmage proposes they join the pursuit, which the enthusiastic priestess immediately accepts. The blonde bishop watches in bewildered disbelief as both companions abandon the temple to follow the knight. The feline archmage offers a parting polite word of appreciation to the stunned bishop. Explaining the knight's relentless nature in the face of demons, the archmage leaves the bishop completely dumbfounded. Running after the departed knight, the red-haired priestess loudly calls for him to wait up. A crow sits silently in a grand Gothic window as the priestess's voice echoes through the night. An ominous black crow stares forward with an eerie, knowing gaze from its moonlit perch. The flock of crows takes flight, casting shadows over the silent, moonlit Gothic temple towers. Title screen appears, signaling the next chapter of the party's unexpected adventure. Under the bright, radiant full moon, the quiet night forest echoes with distant, rustling sounds. Owls? The split-haired knight grudgingly accepts that his persistent companions are sticking with him regardless. The feline archmage suggests searching for witnesses. The knight instantly dismisses the idea as unnecessary. The feline archmage asks if he knows the demon's identity, prompting the knight to suspect a hidden test. Intrigued by his confidence, the red-haired priestess eagerly begs the knight to share his expert deduction. The adorable red-haired priestess puffs her cheeks in determination, her cute dumpling expression matching her resolve. The knight struggles to hide his growing parental pride while maintaining his cold, critical demeanor. The priestess defensively demands he stop questioning her divinely appointed role, despite her obvious shortcomings. The split-haired knight sharply demands to know what kind of demon they are actually tracking. The knight secretly admires the priestess's stubborn devotion, finding her absolute loyalty to divine will incredibly earnest. The knight identifies the demon as a draugr, immediately sparking a wave of understanding from the priestess. The companions plan their investigation, concluding they must search local graveyards for the draug's signature stench. While his companions humbly praise each other's knowledge, the split-haired knight remains deep in serious thought. Clenching his fist, the knight desperately tries to summon grim thoughts to suppress his proud fatherly smile. The knight recalls key lore details, realizing this minor incident originally led to temple corruption and demon worship. The group walks steadily through the dark village streets, their footsteps echoing quietly in the night. The red-haired priestess suddenly stops and sniffs the air, detecting a faint, unusual scent nearby. Alert and tense, the red-haired priestess warns her companions that she smells something highly abnormal. Guided by the foul scent, the party zeroes in on a dark, narrow alley within the inner district. Reaching down, the knight reads a bright, magical lantern to illuminate the dark alleyway. The knight raises the brilliant lantern, casting a sharp light across the gloomy stone path ahead. Lantern light reveals a severely disheveled, wounded village man slumped against the damp stone wall. Staring at the slumped figure, the red-haired priestess gasps in absolute horror at what she sees. The light reveals the grim reality of a decaying corpse, signaling that the disaster has already begun. The golden glow of the lantern cuts through the shadows, fully exposing the tragic victim of the beast. Horrified by the brutal sight, the young priestess covers her mouth in a quiet, sorrowful prayer. The feline archmage immediately offers to fetch the village guards, leaving the others to secure the area. The knight grimly realizes the overwhelming stench confirms the draugr is nearby, making this hunt extremely troublesome. The knight kneels beside the victim, carefully examining the cold remains for any useful clues. Setting down the lantern, the knight softly notes that they arrived far too late to save him. Looking down at the dead man, the knight solemnly promises to deliver swift vengeance on his behalf. Gently closing the dead man's eyes with his gloved hand, the knight wishes him peaceful rest. Bowing her head in the warm lantern light, the priestess begins a quiet prayer for the departed soul. The red-haired priestess clasps her hands together, reciting a sacred prayer of passage for the victim. Though skeptical of religion, the knight internally admits that this cinematic moment is remarkably atmospheric and cool. The feline archmage returns to the alley, announcing that the village guard is on their way. Noting the fresh scent, the archmage begins channeling magic to locate the nearby, fleeing monster. A massive blue magic circle illuminates the dark alleyway as the archmage unleashes her tracking spell. The feline archmage channels her tracking magic, her eyes glowing with intense blue energy. The feline archmage explains that her spell is brief, but the split-haired knight suddenly dashes ahead, surprising his companions. The split-haired knight charges forward through the dark streets, eager to find the monster. Annoyed by his sudden departure, the feline archmage urges the red-haired priestess to follow him, and she quickly agrees. The red-haired priestess reaches forward, declaring that she will purify the dark demonic energy as they pursue their target. The split-haired knight notes with satisfaction that her purification magic ensures they will definitely not lose their way. The knight amusedly admits to himself that despite preferring solo play, having companions makes his quest much easier. Guided by the glowing magic trail, the companions dash together through the narrow city alleys. The split-haired knight sharply scans the surroundings as they close in on their target. Kicking up dust, the split-haired knight slides to a sudden stop on the cobblestones. The red-haired priestess gasps in shock as they are suddenly forced to a halt behind him. The magical tracking trail leads directly into a solid brick wall, blocking their immediate path. The feline archmage dismayedly observes that the draugr has phased directly through the solid stone wall. The feline archmage proposes taking the high ground to search for another route, which the knight agrees is a logical plan. The split-haired knight looks up, deciding to try a more direct, unconventional gaming approach. The feline archmage frantically questions if he is about to perform another reckless stunt. A sudden, powerful burst of energy launches the knight straight up into the air. The split-haired knight leaps high into the night sky, flying effortlessly over the rooftops. Against the backdrop of the radiant full moon, the knight glides gracefully toward a rooftop. His silver-armored gauntlet grips the stone edge of the roof to pull himself up. With an effortless swing, the split-haired knight pulls himself over the roof edge. The split-haired knight lands on the tiled roof in a perfectly executed kneeling stance. From the street below, the red-haired priestess calls out to him in utter amazement. The feline archmage can only watch from below, sighing at his absolute recklessness. The split-haired knight stands high on the roof, looking down at his earthbound companions. The knight is internally thrilled by the exhilarating freedom and realism of the game. He marvels that he can perform such incredible parkour feats simply through natural movement and realistic wind resistance. The knight smugly wonders if he has a natural talent for parkour, before telling himself not to get ahead of his ego. Keeping his focus, the knight runs along the roofs to catch the fleeing demon before the tracking magic runs out. The knight halts at the edge of a roof, realizing the magic trail leads directly below him. Looking down into the dark street, the split-haired knight mockingly questions the monster's foolish trick. The split-haired knight prepares to strike, knowing his prey has nowhere left to run. With a powerful push, the split-haired knight launches himself down from the roof. He leaps swiftly from roof to roof, closing the distance to his hidden target. The split-haired knight plunges downward like a shooting star, ready to unleash his blade. Swept up in the thrill of the chase, the knight lets out a wild, maniacal laugh. Overjoyed by the sheer fun of the game, the knight celebrates his exhilarating triumph and praises the god-tier system. The story shifts back to the dark, tense atmosphere of the ongoing demonic hunt. A sudden, powerful flash of magical energy cuts through the cloudy night sky. The split-haired knight smashes his sword down, releasing a colossal shockwave of light. The knight solemnly dedicates his strike as swift vengeance for the innocent victim's death. Ominous, thick black smoke begins to rise from the shattered stone street. A system description reveals the Draugr is a grave-dwelling wraith that phases through stone to hunt its prey. Drawing his glowing blade, the split-haired knight warns the hidden monster that its pathetic game of hide-and-seek ends here. The split-haired knight suddenly pauses, noticing something unusual about his immediate surroundings. The knight is confused by the sudden absence of his companions, expecting the NPCs to load nearby automatically. He complains about the terrible stench and wishes the red-haired priestess was there to purify the foul air, noting the difficulty of timing strikes in 3D. Deep, blood-red shadows swirl through the narrow alley, intensifying the dark, ominous atmosphere. As the knight considers waiting for his party members, an unexpected voice echoes through the alley, addressing someone named Gretchen. The split-haired knight spins around as the newcomer reveals they were trying to shake off a persistent heretic. A dark hooded figure looms above, expressing absolute delight that the knight has approached him directly. The blue-haired contractor looks up with a grin, claiming that the king is looking for Gretchen. A system notification explains that demon contractors trade their souls to demons for forbidden power. The split-haired knight is utterly dumbfounded by the unexpected name he just heard. He nervously watches the blue-haired contractor, completely baffled by this bizarre turn of plot. The blue-haired contractor eagerly offers his assistance, inviting him to enjoy a festival of slaughter. The split-haired knight narrows his eyes, unable to recall any lore about someone named Gretchen. A cold breeze blows under the crescent moon as he slowly grips his glowing sword. He realizes with a grim expression that he has stumbled into the demon worshipper route. The main title screen appears, reading, "Is it bad that the main character's a role player?" He imagines shattering his human chains to unleash a terrifying dark power from within. A system notification in his fantasy declares that a power beyond humanity has awakened. In his vivid imagination, he screams as he acquires ancient and forbidden knowledge. He envisions himself shedding his human limits and breaking free from all earthly shackles. He imagines transforming into a towering demon with massive black wings and horned crown. A bright magic circle glows as he envisions himself mastering ultimate demonic authority. He smiles as he imagines commanding dark spirits while wielding a flaming blood-red sword. He quickly snaps back to reality, sweating at how ridiculous his dark fantasy was. He decides to save the evil playthrough for later and focus on his current run. He resolves to maintain his heroic roleplay and keep his righteous knight persona intact. The split-haired knight hoists his massive sword overhead, preparing for a devastating downward swing. A purple glow envelops his blade as he activates his powerful breaker skill. Colossal energy shockwave tears through the stone street, shattering everything in its path. The split-haired knight lowers his weapon, silently wondering if his attack successfully finished the foe. He is frustrated to find a massive, dark-armored shield bearer blocking his path instead. The blue-haired contractor trembles in absolute terror, desperately begging the knight for mercy. The split-haired knight glares down coldly, repeating the word with pure disgust. He lunges forward through the air, promising that the contractor will find no salvation. Terrified, the blue-haired contractor panics and desperately calls upon his summoned protector. The target system highlights a massive armored knight with glowing eyes and a red plume. The giant summon groans menacingly as it readies its massive shield and dark sword. Split-haired knight easily dodges, scoffing at the contractor's pathetic attempt to defend himself. He collides violently with the giant summon, sparks flying as their weapons clash. With a fierce roar, the split-haired knight demands the giant shield-bearer get out of his way. The knight's relentless assault forces the dark-armored summon back, kicked up in dark smoke. The split-haired knight grits his teeth, complaining about how much he hates fighting amorphous monsters. He leaps backward to create space, noting that the contractor has heavily buffed the summon. He resolves that it will be much easier to eliminate the contractor first. Preparing his next move, he decides to test a theory about his skill's mechanics. Footsteps echo as the split-haired knight dashes forward, closing the distance at high speed. He unleashes a wide, sweeping slash that cleaves through the darkness of the alleyway. He notices that the magical effect of his breaker skill is still lingering on his sword. The skill remains active even without a vertical strike, opening up a new tactic. With absolute confidence, the split-haired knight unleashes his lingering breaker skill on the summon. The powerful strike hits the giant armored defender, triggering a massive fiery red explosion. A colossal dome of fire completely consumes the summoned beast, destroying it instantly. A quest window confirms the Draugr is defeated, updating his objective to capture the contractor. The split-haired knight lets out a sigh of relief, glad the annoying obstacle is gone. He looms over the trembling contractor, declaring that it is finally time for judgment. The terrified blue-haired contractor frantically pleads, claiming he never meant to interfere with the guild. The split-haired knight grips his sword, realizing these targets caused his initial wild goose chase, as the contractor stammers Gretchen's name. Sweating in pure terror, the blue-haired contractor warns that the split-haired knight is no ordinary heretic, but the dangerous hero. The contractor urges Gretchen to take the hero's head to the king, but the priestess and feline archmage suddenly arrive to interrupt him. Turning around in surprise, the blue-haired contractor is dismayed to see the newly arrived heretics blocking his path. The split-haired knight happily realizes he won't have to kill the contractor for his roleplay, smugly telling his slow companions they are late. Brandishing her holy weapon, the furious red-haired priestess demands if the blue-haired contractor sold his soul to demons. In a blinding flash of light, the split-haired knight lunges forward to join the fight, as the contractor grunts in surprise. Shielding his eyes, the bewildered blue-haired contractor desperately asks Gretchen why he is betraying them. Clutching his dark cloak in absolute despair, the blue-haired contractor demands to know why Gretchen is betraying their alliance. Looking back with a calm, indifferent expression, the split-haired knight replies that he does not know either. The split-haired knight silently decides to let the story unfold, not caring who Gretchen is or whose side he was on. The split-haired knight gives a smug, fanged grin and a thumbs down, eagerly anticipating the upcoming battle. With a swift, fluid motion, the split-haired knight draws his gleaming, red-edged sword to prepare for battle. Shouting with intense fury, the split-haired knight declares that the contractor has absolutely no right to ask questions. As dark energies swirl under the full moon, the split-haired knight commands his opponent to atone with his death. As a new morning dawns, a flock of birds flies over the majestic white palace gleaming in the golden sunrise. Inside the palace corridors, a group of holy knights led by the feline archmage escorts the captured contractor. The split-haired knight watches quietly from behind as the feline archmage and the knights escort the contractor into the palace hall. The red-haired priestess turns back, casting a sharp and suspicious glance over her shoulder. The split-haired knight looks on as a system narration reveals that the blue-haired contractor managed to survive the battle. Cowering in terror, the blue-haired contractor squeals as a sharp weapon is pointed directly at him under the blue light. The feline archmage summons glowing blue chains to bind the contractor, addressing the watching split-haired knight. Glaring at the feline archmage, the split-haired knight angrily demands if she is trying to stand in his way. Holding the glowing chains, the feline archmage calmly advises that capturing the contractor is far more valuable than killing him. Staring with an intense blue eye, the feline archmage reasons that a mastermind must be behind the summoning of the Draugr. The split-haired knight storms off as the feline archmage reminds him that patience is more important than momentary rage. Pouting childishly, the split-haired knight reflects that he was only trying to deplete the NPC's health for a capture. As a capture notification appears, the split-haired knight realizes the contractor's dramatic dialogue was just a scripted sequence. Walking forward, the split-haired knight muses on how the remake introduced several new and unfamiliar gameplay mechanics. The split-haired knight suddenly senses something wrong as a high-pitched ringing sound begins to echo in the corridor. Turning around, the split-haired knight is surprised to see several glowing red screens hovering in the corridor. Surrounded by numerous floating red screens, the split-haired knight is completely baffled by what is happening. System notification warns that the split-haired knight's health points have slightly decreased. The split-haired knight expresses his desire to watch the interrogation of the blue-haired contractor by the temple authorities. Due to the piling red warnings inside the temple, the split-haired knight is forced to abandon his plan and leave. Looking at his silver-armored arm, the split-haired knight wonders if the sealed demon triggered the temple's warnings. The split-haired knight laments the absurd difficulty of playing a demon-class character who is banned from holy temples. Surrounded by flames, the split-haired knight grins confidently, declaring that the high difficulty only gets him more fired up. Walking forward, the split-haired knight reflects that a true veteran player lives for the extreme challenge of role-playing. Flashback shows a high-level party getting completely wiped out, highlighting the split-haired knight's impressive veteran gaming skills. Stepping out of the grand temple gates, the split-haired knight wonders if he will travel with these companions until the end. The split-haired knight sighs in loneliness, having nothing to do now that his party members are busy. A new quest window directs him to talk to the bishop once the interrogation of the contractor is finished. As the split-haired knight wonders how to pass the time, the red-haired priestess suddenly runs up behind him. With a bright, enthusiastic expression, the red-haired priestess eagerly asks to accompany the split-haired knight on his journey. The split-haired knight is dumbfounded, wondering why the red-haired priestess always appears the moment he thinks of her. Turning back, the split-haired knight inquires why the red-haired priestess is not attending the ongoing interrogation. The red-haired priestess explains that the archmage advised her to follow him, rather than rewarding the worshipper with her presence. The split-haired knight's sweat drops, realizing the feline archmage simply dumped the priestess on him to babysit. Walking side by side through the courtyard, the red-haired priestess cheerfully asks if the split-haired knight has other tasks. The split-haired knight looks down in deep annoyance, muttering a quiet curse in his frustration. The red-haired priestess walks up behind the split-haired knight, questioning his method of hunting demons. The red-haired priestess is suddenly taken aback, her eyes widening in complete shock and surprise. Overjoyed, the red-haired priestess praises his profound wisdom, while the knight quietly desires to simply level up. The split-haired knight internally wonders if the red-haired priestess is just a praise-bot NPC. He contemplates how she is like a chatty little dumpling, finding her cute but slightly bothersome. The red-haired priestess stands proudly, holding her silver mace amidst a whimsical background of cute dumplings. The split-haired knight feels completely overwhelmed, sweat dropping as his introverted nature struggles with her energy. The red-haired priestess notes that gathering information at sunset is hard, making the knight realize his own fickleness. The split-haired knight coldly decides they should head to the local adventurers guild instead. The red-haired priestess enthusiastically agrees, praising his wisdom as she walks closely behind him. The split-haired knight sweat drops from behind, lamenting that his role-player persona prevents him from being nice. He weeps dramatically in his mind about his restrictive character concept while they walk under the moonlight. A title card introduces the story title, questioning if the main character being a role-player is bad. The exterior of a stone building with glowing windows stands quietly under a starry night sky. A decorative metal sign confirms their arrival at the Adventurers Guild in the city of Soman. Gaval. A white-furred beastkin woman in navy robes humbly muses on her lack of real-world adventuring experience. Inside, the split-haired knight demands demon-related quests from the guild receptionist as his companions watch him. The black-haired receptionist with glasses verifies his token, noting that demon requests are rare but suspects exist. The split-haired knight demands the request anyway, while the receptionist is secretly surprised that he can read. The receptionist hands over a paper detailing a mysterious death investigation with a reward of 500,000 gil. The split-haired knight slams the counter, stating that the temple has already resolved this particular issue. Knight laments losing the massive reward to the temple, while his companions peer over his shoulder. The white-furred beastkin woman asks the receptionist if there are any reports of unexplained disappearances or sudden violence. The red-haired priestess submits their adventurer tokens, confirming they are traveling together with the split-haired knight. The receptionist explains that gathering rumors would require investigating personally or visiting the local information guild. The receptionist inspects the tokens, shocked to realize he is dealing with an inquisitor and a magic tower sage. The receptionist immediately becomes extremely helpful, sparkling with eagerness as the knight marvels at the game's realism. The knight sympathizes with the overworked night shift receptionist, wishing him luck in dealing with the VIP guests. The receptionist adjusts his glasses, preparing to share a minor piece of rumor with the group. The white-furred beastkin woman reacts in surprise as the receptionist reports a sudden drop in local pickpockets. The receptionist explains that the slums have fewer beggars, raising suspicions of a spreading disease or something sinister. With a sudden loud slam echoing, the furious red-haired priestess strikes the counter, startling the receptionist mid-sentence. The red-haired priestess shouts in intense anger, demanding to know if wicked souls have forgotten God's grace. The split-haired knight watches the red-haired priestess, internally comparing her furious face to an angry red dumpling. The split-haired knight is pleased to recognize a classic quest hook, suspecting another demon is nearby. The receptionist sweats nervously, asking with hesitation if there is truly a demon lurking in the city. The white-furred beastkin woman asks the receptionist to report any new information to the temple, which he accepts. The split-haired knight indifferently notes how brutal it is for the receptionist to get extra night shift work. Walking out of the building, the knight is glad the worker is just game data rather than a real salaryman. The split-haired knight turns his head slightly, announcing that he is heading straight to the slums. The white-furred beastkin woman smiles and urges the red-haired priestess to join the knight in his investigation. The red-haired priestess blushes with determination, eager to continue learning from the impressive split-haired knight. She runs out after him, begging to accompany the demon knight as they leave the guild hall. The split-haired knight anticipates that his temple health drain debuff will lead to a future war with the temple. The red-haired priestess runs forward with pure enthusiasm, her face shining with determination and holy light. The split-haired knight walks forward with determination, his large black sword resting securely on his back. The red-haired priestess raises her glowing white weapon, shouting in anger at an unseen adversary. A cartoonish, chibified version of the split-haired knight looks sad, mourning the stressful future events. The split-haired knight comically frets over the impending epic cutscene, though nothing has actually happened yet. The split-haired knight grins confidently, eagerly anticipating the high difficulty of his role-playing quest. A system window presents a new sub-quest to locate a pickpocket and a passerby. The split-haired knight walks silently alongside the red-haired priestess through the dim corridor. The red-haired priestess curiously asks the split-haired knight if he knows the slum's location. The split-haired knight coldly dismisses her curiosity, declaring that all wretched slums are identical. He secretly plans to use the minimap to navigate while the priestess pledges to learn. System Guide explains how hostile humanoids are represented as red markers on the minimap. The split-haired knight narrows his blue eye, carefully scouting the dark path ahead. He mentally notes that the narrow slums will be a highly unfavorable battlefield for him. Their dark shadows stretch across the cold stone floor as they enter the quiet alley. A high-angle view reveals the crumbling wooden rooftops and structures of the gloomy slums. The split-haired knight confronts a local, demanding to know what he just said. A sweating, terrified local man trembles in fear under the knight's intimidating presence. Inside a dim room, the red-haired priestess corners the chubby man with her silver mace. The red-haired priestess furiously commands the terrified man to speak the absolute truth before God. Wielding her massive silver mace, the red-haired priestess demands if the temple captured them. A colorful transition graphic showcases stylized fantasy warriors, posing dramatically before an upcoming adventure. A bold graphic screen signals a transition, dividing the narrative chapters. A glowing green minimap floats above the dark, quiet streets as the party travels. As they walk, the red-haired priestess suddenly turns back with a highly suspicious expression. The white-furred beastkin woman senses a strange atmosphere while the knight monitors nearby hostiles. The split-haired knight remains quiet, closely observing the dark street ahead of them. Anticipating a quest event, the knight pauses as a dark-haired figure suddenly bumps into him. The dark-haired figure quickly apologizes and runs past, unaware she has made a mistake. With lightning-fast reflexes, the split-haired knight grabs the dark-haired pickpocket's wrist mid-theft. The split-haired knight threatens her, demanding her cooperation if she wishes to keep her hands. In a comical chibi moment, the knight celebrates successfully triggering his planned script event. A system tutorial identifies the targets in the alley, designating the pickpocket as the target. A cartoon depicts the pickpocket running joyously, because nothing says customer service like hand-delivering yourself into custody. The split-haired knight gloats about baiting her with his purse, while she curses her luck. The red-haired priestess stands over the cowering thief, brandishing her heavy silver weapon. She cites holy doctrine to sever the thief's hand, but the beastkin woman stops her. The white-furred beastkin woman explains that sacred doctrines should not be applied blindly. The red-haired priestess protests, arguing that the thief was caught committing a sin. The white-furred beastkin woman patiently advises showing mercy, citing the split-haired knight's actions. A majestic, glowing vision of an eye-patched deity in a meditative pose flashes behind them. The red-haired priestess stands completely stunned, deeply affected by the profound spiritual lesson. She lowers her silver weapon, looking down in deep thought to contemplate the message. She complies, while the split-haired knight is completely bewildered by the sudden holy projection. The captured pickpocket angrily demands to know how long they intend to hold her hostage. The split-haired knight demands that she lead them directly to the pickpocket leader. The split-haired knight glares down at her with a cold, unrelenting expression. Bound by glowing magical chains, the pickpocket begrudgingly leads the party through the slums. A jagged thought bubble echoes the priestess's intense questioning about the temple's involvement. Inside the rustic building, the red-haired priestess continues interrogating the terrified chubby man. The sweating man asks if the inquisitors themselves weren't the ones who took them away. Outraged by the accusation, the red-haired priestess clenches her fist and shouts in anger. She furiously explains that criminal reformation is strictly scheduled and authorized by the Great Temple. At Chibi Bubble, the split-haired knight sweat drops, questioning her focus on the rules. The white-furred beastkin woman calms her, pointing out that rules are not the priority now. The split-haired knight wonders why the temple plays such a prominent role in the demon knight route, as the red-haired priestess follows closely behind him with a worried expression. The split-haired knight stares intently, demanding to know since when the temple began taking people, how many they took, and to be told everything they know. Sweating profusely in fear, The terrified local man explains that they began taking people about a month ago, quietly taking only one or two at a time. The sweating man continues, saying that the abductions were carried out secretly, almost resembling human trafficking. Terrified of his own words, the man quickly backtracks, claiming it was just a figure of speech, while the split-haired knight internally notes how guilty they look. The red-haired priestess reacts with explosive fury to the accusation, demanding to know what he just said about the temple taking people. Leaning down with a calm yet highly intimidating presence, the white-furred beastkin woman asks the trembling man if these abductions occurred regularly. Trembling under her gaze, the sweating man confirms that they occurred regularly 2 or 3 times a week, right when the inquisitors patrolled at set times. The bald man adds that because of this he had instructed everyone in the area to avoid wandering around during those specific patrol hours. The white-furred beastkin woman pauses thoughtfully, wondering what could truly be behind these scheduled patrols and disappearances. The white-furred beastkin woman raises a hand to her mouth, quietly questioning if they could be offering sacrifices to demons. Shocked and outraged, the red-haired priestess fiercely defends her religion, shouting that the order would absolutely never perform sacrifices. The split-haired knight dismisses her protest with a cold, mocking remark, calling her unwavering belief naive nonsense. A tense silence fills the room as the split-haired knight rhythmically taps his black-gloved fingers against his armor. With her fist trembling in frustration, the red-haired priestess is forced to listen as the knight coldly states that things happen whether one believes in them or not. Internally, the split-haired knight is secretly thrilled, celebrating the classic trope of a protagonist growing stronger as their beliefs are shattered, while mentally noting that this painful realization is how a character gains real depth. The knight demands to know where the abducted people were taken. Sweating nervously, the local man admits that he only receives reports from the neighborhood kids and doesn't know much else. A sudden voice cuts through the tension as the dark-haired pickpocket girl speaks up, declaring that she knows the answer. Surprised that she didn't run away after being pinned to the ground, the group listens as the pickpocket girl admits she doesn't know personally, but knows someone who might. Looking determined yet anxious, the freckled girl asks if the matter must be highly important, since it involves demons. The dark-haired girl flinches as the towering, split-haired knight silently steps forward and approaches her. Trembling under his intense gaze, the short girl nervously stammers, asking what he wants from her. While the split-haired knight maintains a cold and intimidating outer expression, he is internally beaming with excitement over the progression of his quest. Glowering with annoyance, the dark-haired girl begrudgingly prepares to lead the way after the knight commands her to do so. Crows gather on a dark, desolate slum street, crying out ominously near stains of fresh blood on the cold ground. The dark alley is filled with grim sights of wild, bloodied beasts feeding on carcasses as the party travels deeper. Feeling incredibly tense, the freckled girl casts a nervous glance back at the heavily armed companions walking behind her. The girl warns the group that they are now entering the dangerous, unregulated territory of the real back alleys. The dark-haired girl strictly warns the party to keep their weapons sheathed if they want answers, explaining that the locals are extremely tense. She directly warns the red-haired priestess, stating that the residents of the inner district absolutely despise anyone associated with the temple. The red-haired priestess angrily snaps that she has no desire to associate with thieves, but the beastkin woman quickly cuts her off. Huffing with attitude, the freckled girl warns them not to do anything foolish to drag her down, insisting she is only helping because of the situation's importance. The split-haired knight amusedly watches the bickering pair, internally comparing them to a pair of adorable, angry little animals. Amusedly wonders if the pickpocket NPC is designed as a tsundere, picturing her with cat ears as she acts defensive. The split-haired knight suddenly ponders if using cat metaphors is considered politically incorrect in a fantasy world where beastkin actually exist. From high above on a rooftop, a mysterious figure stands quietly, peering down at the party as they walk through the street. The hooded watcher reveals a glimpse of green hair under his white cloak, as he closely monitors the group's movements from above. A sudden system alert flashes before the knight, warning him that hostile targets have been detected within 20 meters. The red warning window blinks persistently, confirming the presence of nearby enemies. Reacting instantly to the system warning, the split-haired knight draws his glowing blue sword with lightning speed. The freckled girl reacts in pure shock and anger, shouting at him for ignoring her warning and drawing his weapon. Staring coldly into the darkness, the knight calmly tells her that if she wants him to keep his sword sheathed, someone else needs to act first. Looking up at the rooftop, the split-haired knight directs his words at the hooded figure, telling him to put away his weapon first. The cloaked figure grins with amusement, admitting that the split-haired knight is surprisingly quick to notice him. With a sudden, energetic burst, the mysterious figure leaps off the roof edge and lands down below. The green-haired beastkin lands gracefully on the stone street, his long green tail swaying behind him. The stranger analyzes the knight's appearance, noting his distinctive two-toned hair and the gauntlet on his arm. Staring directly at his eye patch, the green-haired man declares that there is absolutely no mistaking the knight's identity. Flashing a confident, sharp-toothed grin, the mysterious green-haired beastkin welcomes the knight by his title, Lord Demon Knight. The red-haired priestess and the white-furred beastkin look down at the split-haired knight as she asks him if this newcomer is an acquaintance of his. In a dramatic close-up, the split-haired knight draws his sword, sweating slightly as he questions the identity of the mysterious stranger before him. Sweating nervously, the split-haired knight stares blankly, internally wondering if this is part of the game's lore since he cannot recall such a cheeky character. The hooded green-haired beastkin explains that he only knows the knight by reputation, noting that he is quite a celebrity, while the knight internally realizes that this is part of the quest setup. Staring coldly at the stranger, the split-haired knight demands to know what he wants, mockingly asking if he expects a pat on the back just for recognizing him. The green-haired beastkin flashes a smug, toothy grin under his hood, playfully retorting that he was actually about to ask the knight the very same question. With an intense close-up of his glowing green eye, the mysterious green-haired man asks what could have possibly brought the party all the way out here. The green-haired beastkin sneeringly asks if the knight brought the temple's lapdogs to help kidnap more people, causing the priestess to react in outrage, while the terrified pickpocket quickly intervenes to explain they came to investigate. In a comical chibi sequence, the knight's sweat drops in confusion, thinking about how the priestess and pickpocket resembled angry cats, only for an actual catman to show up. The dark-haired pickpocket girl nervously looks up at the knight, reinforcing her explanation that the abductions might be related to demons. The green-haired beastkin's face turns serious as he questions if they are truly saying that demons were the ones taking the children. Clenching his teeth as sweat drips down, the green-haired beastkin begins to connect the dots, realizing what this situation must truly mean. As the green-haired man anxiously questions if the temple could really be behind it, the split-haired knight tells him they don't know yet, and reminds him they came to find the truth. Stepping forward gracefully, the white-furred beastkin woman calmly acknowledges that his trust in the temple has hit rock bottom, but explains they are outsiders investigating the situation. The white-furred beastkin woman earnestly asks the green-haired man for his cooperation, stressing the urgent need to prevent any more victims. A tense silence fills the alleyway, punctuated only by the rhythmic tapping of the green-haired beastkin's foot as his long green tail sways behind him. The green-haired beastkin narrows his sharp green eyes, carefully weighing his options and evaluating the party's sincerity. With a sudden decisive snap of his fingers, the green-haired man breaks the silence to make his decision. The green-haired beastkin orders a hidden ally to go and report the situation as a shadowy ninja figure leaps away from the brick alley wall. The shadowy ninja companion glances back, quietly asking the green-haired man if he intends to head into the danger zone himself. Turning back slightly, the green-haired beastkin confirms his decision, confidently stating that he can look after himself no matter what happens. A quest window for Ominous Omen pops up, updating the objectives, while the split-haired knight internally wonders if this Catman NPC is a regular member of the Thieves or Information Guild. The split-haired knight tries to recall the NPC's identity, noting that he looks familiar, but it's too dark to remember, before telling the group to follow him. Turning his head in surprise, the green-haired beastkin yells at the knight, asking if he has any intention of waiting for them. A sudden flash of blue magical energy sweeps over the party as they stand together in the dark alleyway. Feeling exhausted, the white-furred beastkin woman sighs heavily, lamenting that she never expected to be running around like this in her old age. Casting a helpful support spell, the white-furred beastkin woman grants a speed buff, as the priestess and knight happily celebrate the boost and chibi bubbles. The split-haired knight remains highly focused, internally analyzing the current situation and deducing that this feels like a classic pattern control quest. Moving swiftly down the narrow alleyways under a magical speed buff, the knight hopes he can finish the quest before his full dive session times out, as a glitching warning window blinks below. Under the brilliant light of a full moon, the party enters a relatively peaceful and lit-up plaza where citizens are strolling between medieval-style houses. The heavy sound of deliberate footsteps echoes through the quiet stone alleyway as the party approaches their destination. Stopping at the edge of the street, the green-haired beastkin points ahead and quietly announces that they have finally reached the correct location. Staring ahead with a shocked and worried expression, the red-haired priestess asks in disbelief if the victims were truly taken inside that building. A light dust of glowing particles floats around a quiet, ordinary-looking storefront, with crates of vegetables displayed outside. The white-furred beastkin woman stands beside the knight, observing the store and noting that she can sense a highly skilled concealment barrier around it. Impressed by her perception, the green-haired beastkin confirms her suspicions and reveals that there is indeed a powerful barrier hiding the warehouse and the basement. A sudden system chime sounds as the split-haired knight's expression turns sharp. The quest log for Ominous Omen flashes, updating the goals to finding a way to enter and searching for traces, prompting a satisfied smirk from the knight's chibi head. As the knight asks how they should get inside, the white-furred beastkin woman thoughtfully notes that since the barrier is only for concealment, breaking it won't be difficult. Checking the updated quest window, the knight notes that the quest description doesn't mention anything about needing to sneak in. The green-haired beastkin reacts with absolute shock and panic as the split-haired knight casually declares that he is going straight in. Desperately gesturing to stop him, the green-haired man warns that they will draw the guards and have no intel on the inside, but the knight coldly dismisses his concerns. With a sharp metallic sound, the split-haired knight confidently draws his massive sword, ready for direct confrontation. Looking back with an unwavering gaze, the knight coldly states that kidnapping is a far more severe crime than simple trespassing. With his weapon drawn, the split-haired knight strides forward boldly towards the vegetable shop as the others watch him in stunned silence. Humorous notes float around the walking knight as he internally confesses that he only said those cool words because he was getting tired and wanted to wrap things up. The split-haired knight walks ahead, confidently assuming that because they are game NPCs, they will be forced to follow his lead regardless of his recklessness. Looking completely dumbfounded, the green-haired beastkin asks the priestess and archmage if the knight is always this reckless. Holding her glowing magical staff, the white-furred beastkin woman chuckles softly, replying that it has only been less than a week since they met him. With the reflection of the knight's silhouette shining in her green eyes, the red-haired priestess proudly declares her belief that he is a man of great skill and conviction. Gripping her heavy silver mace tightly, the red-haired priestess reveals just yesterday, we placed a demon contractor in detention at the temple. The green-haired beastkin reacts in pure disbelief, shouting, "What? A real demon contractor?" While the priestess resolutely holds her massive shield and adds, "Exactly. And also," looking deeply determined behind her shield, the priestess continues, "I don't want to believe it, but if the temple really is in collusion with a demon contractor, and if they are gathering a sacrifice." Sweating nervously as the gravity of the situation sinks in, the green-haired beastkin mutters, "Then we have no time to lose." Charging forward past him, the priestess calls back fiercely, "So if you're scared, hide and wait, you scoundrel. You've done enough just guiding us here." Running right alongside her, the white-furred beastkin archmage chuckles and says, "Your thoughts have grown much deeper, Inquisitor," to which the priestess proudly replies, "I only realized this by watching and reflecting on the demon knight's actions." Left behind in the dim blue-lit alleyway, the green-haired beastkin watches them dash off with a mixture of annoyance and worry. Frustrated by their reckless enthusiasm, the green-haired beastkin scratches his head and grumbles, "Geez, what are they thinking? Rushing in there completely unprepared? Forget it!" A tense close-up of the beastkin's sharp, glowing green eye reveals he has no intention of abandoning them. Sprinting as fast as he can to catch up with the group, the green-haired beastkin complains aloud, "This job is going to be the death of me!" Inside the shop, the split-haired knight stands calmly over scattered carrots and cabbages, calling out to the latecomers, "Guys." Looking back over his shoulder with a neutral expression, the knight asks them, "Are you really not coming?" Standing inside the messy storefront, the split-haired knight has already effortlessly bound and subdued 2 guards, declaring, "I'm all ready to go down to the basement, and everything is set." A comical quick trivia chalkboard pops up, showing the chibi knight pointing out that the shaggy race has animal-like lower faces, while the cutie tribe only has animal ears and tails, concluding they are different races. With a violent crash, the wooden trapdoor leading to the basement underpass is blown wide open. Staring down into the dark opening, the split-haired knight casually observes, "Oh, an underpass." As the priestess and archmage catch up, the knight internally thinks that this feels like a regional boss fight before a logout. While the priestess gasps, "My lord, have you subdued them all already?" The archmage sighs, remarking, "Sir, you truly show no mercy," while the green-haired beastkin runs up behind them, panting, "Tell me about it." Smirking confidently, the knight points forward, advising, "If you're going to get cold feet, back out now," while internally gloating about how eagerly he has been waiting for this combat. The eager priestess rushes down the stairs, shouting, "No, wait for me, sir," as the split-haired knight leads the way. Staring intensely into the dark abyss of the underpass, the knight wonders what lies ahead. Following close behind him down the stairs, the red-haired priestess remarks, "I feel a strange, tingling sensation. Could this be?" Her expression suddenly turns fierce and shocked as she realizes, "I feel a strong demonic energy coming from below." Turning back to urge the rest of the party on, the priestess shouts, "We must hurry. It seems they are plotting something down there." Under the brilliant blue light of a magical speed buff, the archmage casts "Understood. Haste," as the green-haired beastkin readies his twin daggers. Feeling highly focused, the split-haired knight internally notes that this is his first actual party combat in this game. The party swiftly descends the spiral staircase as the knight eagerly wonders how realistically the game's NPC party combat mechanics have been designed. A quiet, lingering view of the empty storefront entryway, with scattered vegetables strewn across the floor leading to the open staircase. Title screen. Is it bad that the main character's a role player? A system notification chime sounds, revealing the name of the new area, Solman Hidden Underpass. Surrounded by magical blue energy rings, the party continues sprinting down the dark stone stairs. With a bright, violent slash, the heavy iron lock on the double doors is instantly shattered. The split-haired knight kicks open the massive doors with overwhelming force, sending splinters flying into the room. Robed cultists inside the chamber recoil in panic and alarm, screaming, "No! The summoning isn't finished yet!" Gritting his teeth in sheer frustration, the lead cultist curses, "Damn it! Why now of all times?" Seeing the intruders, the panicked cultist looks up as the green-haired beastkin closes in, internally shouting, "The hero is here!" While the archmage calmly concentrates, the split-haired knight stands before them, radiating a terrifying dark crimson aura. Charging forward with her glowing star-shaped shield, the priestess declares fiercely, "That's right, your executioner has arrived." Desperate to buy some time, the lead cultist yells to his followers, "Teesh, buy some time? We just need to hold out a little longer." Gathering dark purple magical energy in his hand, a cultist casts a summoning spell, chanting, "Arise, slaves of hell!" A terrifying human skull, with glowing crimson eyes, rattles and rises from the blood-splattered floor. A group of skeletal monsters stands up to face the party, as a helpful system window explains. Skeleton. A low-level demon born when demonic energy inhabits old bones. Preparing her spell, the archmage asks, "Can you provide covering fire while I'm casting?" and the green-haired beastkin confidently replies, "That's an easy task, sir." With a fierce battle cry, the red-haired priestess swings her heavy mace, shouting, "For God is with me!" Before her strike can land, a split-haired knight dashes past her in a flash of blinding speed, completely catching her off guard. With a cold and focused gaze, the knight prepares to unleash his glowing blade, declaring, "Victory to my sword." Looking back over his shoulder with complete confidence, the knight adds, "I will not yield the vanguard." The red-haired priestess is left standing frozen in comical shock, her mouth wide open at his sudden, awe-inspiring display. Overwhelmed with admiration and excitement, the priestess cries out dramatically, "You are amazing, sir, but this is too much." Her eyes flash with fierce green light and determination as she declares to herself, "I may be lacking, but I, too." Determined to maximize her group's defensive efficiency, the red-haired priestess charges forward to absorb incoming damage, shouting, "I am a man trained to hold the shield and protect the vanguard." The split-haired knight looks highly dissatisfied with this chaotic distribution of resources, realizing that her intervention will reduce his personal growth efficiency, thinking to himself, "No, if you kill them, I don't get the X." While facing down the skeleton guards, the knight remains focused on cost-benefit analysis, calmly assessing the potential rewards of their current undertaking. By the way, this quest. A cultist fanatic screams, "I prepared flesh and blood for you." The knight's gaze turns incredibly sharp as he calculates the most direct path to neutralizing this threat. Aiming to overwhelm the intruders through sheer numbers, the cultist summons a swarm of low-tier skeletal monsters, chanting, "Bring forth darkness and unleash death upon this land." Gritting his teeth in frustration over the disruption of his summoning plans, the purple-haired cultist leader cries out, Gretchen, you will pay the price for your betrayal." Seeking to eliminate the primary threat to their operations, the leader points at the knight and commands, "Make him the first sacrifice of darkness." A massive barrage of dark, volatile energy rushes toward the knight, threatening to disrupt his optimal positioning. Seeing the incoming strike, the beastkin companions panic, shouting, "Oh no!" and "Sir Knight," as they fear a severe loss in their party's combat capability. The red-haired priestess turns back in horror as the dark magic completely envelops the knight, screaming "No!" in fear of losing their vanguard. With the knight seemingly consumed by the dark vortex, the priestess desperately cries out, "Demon Knight!" as the surrounding skeletons prepare to exploit the sudden vulnerability. Refusing to allow a vital asset to be lost, the priestess leaps forward with her glowing mace to clear the area, declaring, "I will save you right now, sir." Using the kinetic energy of the impact to his advantage, the knight performs a highly efficient evasive leap, soaring high above the chaotic battlefield. The dark purple magical residue swirls violently on the floor, having completely failed to hit its target. The knight lands perfectly back on his feet right inside the epicenter of the magical vortex, completely unharmed and ready to counterattack. Appreciating his flawless tactical movement, the priestess looks on in absolute awe, exclaiming, "Whoa, as expected." Viewing the high density of enemies clustered together as a perfect opportunity to maximize his area of effect damage, the knight smirks and notes, "This actually works out better." To ensure a swift and resource-efficient victory, the knight prepares a massive sweep, declaring, "I'll wipe them all out once." Channeling dark energy into his blade, the knight readies his ultimate move to minimize the duration of the conflict, chanting, "Ground!" The devastating strike is unleashed with absolute force, tearing through the air and shattering the arena with a thunderous crash. The red-haired priestess is forced to raise her shield to withstand the immense shockwave of the blast as the surrounding structures crumble. Shaken by the pure force of the impact, she realizes the sheer scale of his destructive capability, murmuring, "Such incredible power!" Seeing his entire defense force instantly neutralized in a single strike, the cultist leader falls back in terror, stammering, "Hie, that is, Gretchen." Emitting a powerful dark aura, the knight stands calmly amidst the debris, his presence alone sufficing to suppress any remaining resistance. Under the crushing weight of the knight's cold, calculated gaze, The terrified cultist begins to weep tears of blood, screaming in pure horror. Desperate to buy even a few seconds of survival, the panicked cultist commands his remaining summons. Kill him! Kill him right now! Hurry up and kill him! As the knight steps forward to eliminate the remaining threats, the leader desperately backpedals, crying, No! No! Stay away from me! Recognizing the absolute futility of his struggle, the fleeing cultist begs for his life, shouting, Spare me! I don't want to die! His chaotic retreat compromises the safety of his own allies, who shout in panic as he stampedes toward them. Wait, if you come this way? With cold, logical detachment, the knight prepares to execute the final blow, stating, Fall into the deepest depths of hell. Prioritizing the permanent removal of these harmful elements from the world, the knight slices through the fleeing cultists, muttering, Vermin. The conflict concludes with the complete elimination of the cultists, leaving the chamber silent as their blood pools over the stone floor. The threat has been neutralized. The spilling of blood inadvertently satisfies the activation conditions of the Crimson Magic Circle on the floor. The crimson runes glow intensely as the magical array begins its automated sequence, drawing upon the sacrifices to initiate the next phase of the ritual.